It all begins on a dark night in the forest, where a small blue lizard runs in fear. The little creature speeds up across the rocky ground, trying to escape the imminent danger. Right behind it, a group of armed orcs charges forward desperately, warning that they need to help their brothers. Just then, a glowing arrow crosses the air at high speed in their direction. The magical attack hits the leg of one of the fleeing warriors head-on. Unable to stay on his feet, he falls yelling in pain while the others try to help him. Watching the scene from afar, an imposing elf holds his bow and comments with disdain about how primitive those creatures are. He considers the orcs mere pests destroying the forest and demands that they simply give up. With that, an intense clash unfolds, with the elven army eliminating the green defenders without any mercy. Even at a disadvantage, one of the warriors charges furiously to try and strike back. But the elven leader easily dodges it, finding all that resistance pathetic. Preparing a powerful skill, he warns that he will send the creature to join its fallen comrades. Suddenly, a blinding green flash illuminates the entire battlefield. A massive green dragon descends from the skies, firing a devastating blast of energy that sweeps the attackers out of the way. As soon as the beast lands, the survivors celebrate with relief the arrival of their great master of the forest. With his overwhelming presence, the green dragon takes the front line of the battlefield to protect his servants. Despite the intimidating pose, the beast coughs up energy, showing signs of injury, and orders his people to retreat immediately deep into the dark forest. One of the orcs hesitates, very worried about what will happen to their territory. The master states directly that they must leave the place for now. However, he makes it very clear that the situation will not end like this. Flapping his immense wings, the creature makes a solemn promise using his own name. As the entity that controls the life and demise in the swamps and woods, he solidifies his commitment. The imposing dragon roars and swears before everyone to take on the title of the Green Dragon. Inspired by this display, the orcs regain their courage and state that they will take everything back from those arrogant invaders. The beast agrees with fury, guaranteeing that their payback will be relentless. Watching it all, the elven leader mocks that grand oath for such an insignificant name. Wasting no time, the elf fires a concentrated spell toward the monster. But the great protector of the forest easily cancels out the magical attack. At that moment, the invading army's confidence begins to crumble before that brute strength. Before the conflict can continue, a new, overwhelming presence appears, tearing through the skies at high speed. A massive golden dragon strikes the green dragon with a completely devastating impact. Pressing his opponent against the ground, the new creature humiliates his rival, calling him an inferior shell. The orcs go into absolute panic, as they recognize that the legendary golden pride has descended upon them. Showing absolutely no mercy, the invader crushes the master of the forest into the rocky ground. Even gravely injured, the green dragon tries to reason, questioning the reason for so much destruction in his lands. The golden being just gives an ironic laugh, treating the opponent like a pathetic failure. Majestically showing off all his power, he declares himself the primordial existence of that world. Right after, the beast takes flight, radiating divine energy all around him. Hovering in the air, the glowing creature claims to have absolute right over all things. He warns the elves that he would never allow his sacred dimension to be taken over by a dull darkness. Gathering an absurd amount of light, he judges everyone down there as filthy beasts that need to disappear. Angered by so much presumption, the green dragon tells his rival to zip it and stop with that attitude. But the supreme being just mocks the rebellion, considering those to be great last words. With a merciless motion, he fires the colossal energy sphere at his targets. The attack hits the surface, wiping out the area in an overwhelming wave of light. The green dragon plummets through the void completely defeated, frustrated with his own weakness against the enemy. In his final moments, he deeply regrets not having the flaming power of the red dragon. He also regrets not possessing the strategic genius of the blue dragon to turn the tables. Intensely wishing for a chance to avenge his people against that golden arrogance, his mysterious essence begins to condense. Through a rift in space and time, the ancient master's energy takes the shape of a peculiar egg, now in the hands of a human. A uniformed soldier examines the object with great curiosity in the middle of a base. He turns the artifact from side to side, totally intrigued by the marks drawn on the shiny shell. Bending down slowly, the man decides to place the unknown item on the dirt ground. All of this happens in a very tense military camp, during the World War III conflict on the Asian front. Inside a nearby tent, a small lizard rests peacefully, warmed by a lamp. Meanwhile, Sergeant Legion focuses his attention on cleaning and checking the parts of his rifle. His concentration is broken when a subordinate enters the place calling for the platoon leader. Without delay, the MC grabs his weapon and quickly gets up to handle whatever is needed. He tells his buddy that he is on his way, adjusting his combat gear with great agility. Stepping out into the camp's security trenches, he notices a small commotion going on outside. Approaching the gathered group, Legion asks directly what is happening in the trench. One of the guys explains the situation, pointing to a child who came down the mountain to their base. The boy waits anxiously, holding his pet dog very tightly so as not to lose it. The subordinate mentions that the kid is desperately hungry and wants to trade the little animal for food. With an extremely cold posture, the sergeant gives the immediate order to send the visitor back home. The mood in the place instantly gets heavy with the leader's harsh and emotionless decision. Giving no room for any kind of argument, the MC turns his back and starts to walk away. Following the given order, one of the guards grabs the child by the arm a bit roughly. Quite scared by the reaction, the little one tries to resist while his dog barks nervously. Watching closely, a recruit quietly comments on the superior's massive lack of empathy. He judges that the sergeant has zero humanity and ended up turning into a monster because of the cruel war. However, before the boy is kicked out, Legion reaches into the pocket of his gear. The little boy stops struggling, completely shocked by the sudden approach of the masked man. Showing that his attitude was pure act, the sergeant hands several cans of supplies directly into the young boy's hands. Relieved by the good deed, the subordinate admits that the squad wouldn't have survived this long without the leadership of someone like that. Very curious about that unexpected attitude, the little boy holds the supplies and his dog, asking what the platoon leader did before all of this started. The sergeant just looks back, keeping his quiet demeanor. At that, the other soldiers comment in admiration about the officer's competence while peacefully eating their rations. Suddenly, the calm is shattered when the reflection of a flying enemy appears on the metal of a weapon, making someone yell in alert. Wasting not a single second, the leader orders everyone to run to the trenches and prepare the heavy ammo for defense. The swarm of small ships advances quickly toward the military base, kicking up dust wherever it passes. Legion runs at full speed to the front line of the armed conflict. One of his subordinates tries to call him amid the chaos of the ambush. But the MC keeps pushing forward with his rifle in hand, totally focused on protecting the squad. A violent impact happens right next to the guy, throwing dirt and shrapnel everywhere. In the middle of the massive confusion, a recruit hides, warning that the situation out there is way too dangerous for anyone. Pressured by the relentless crossfire, someone desperately begs the sergeant to fall back as fast as possible. Ignoring the danger warning, he throws himself over a buddy to protect him, while accurately shooting at the aerial targets. The precise shot hits the enemy machine, causing a grenade to fall freely from the destroyed equipment. In that tense moment, a memory surfaces revealing that before the conflict broke out, his job was just being a pet shop attendant. In his peaceful memories, he loved feeding the small reptiles with all the care and attention in the world. The guy found any living little creature completely fascinating to watch. Taking care of those exotic little animals and being around them was what brought him the purest and truest happiness. Snapping back to the brutal reality of the battlefield, he carries an injured comrade over his shoulders, reflecting that no matter the respect he earns in that nightmare, all the military glory and honor received from his superiors mean absolutely nothing to his heart. Taking off his protective helmet, completely exhausted from the heavy routine, the soldier admits his biggest wish. The image of the little boy makes him realize that deep down, he really just wanted to live an ordinary, worry-free life. While the lethal explosive plummets toward him, he reaches out his hand, wishing only to spend his days taking care of those life forms. Even though they were considered useless critters by many, it was those adorable little things that gave meaning to his days. Facing his imminent end, his human instinct screams louder, solidifying the thought that he wants to keep breathing. The reflection of a mysterious green object takes over his wide eyes. Bracing for the worst-case scenario, the man curls up on the ground, protecting the strange artifact with his own body. The sergeant pants, squeezing his eyes shut tightly, expecting an impact that simply never comes. Completely shocked by the sudden silence, he stares at nothing, noticing that the explosive failed. Sitting on the base's floor, still dazed, he bewilderedly holds the greenish egg that glowed in his hands. Unexpectedly, a booming voice echoes from that object, claiming to be the entity that casts shadows over the entire forest. The invisible figure keeps bragging about being the great master who brings and takes life within the dark swamps. Using his sacred title, the being demands that the human warrior kneel and answer his call immediately. A gigantic aura in the shape of an emerald dragon appears behind the sergeant, ordering the mortal to raise and serve him. Spooked by the crazy apparition, the MC simply loosens his grip. The mystic shell slips through the guy's fingers in slow motion toward the ground. The magical item hits the dirt with a dull thud, rolling without any reverence. From that clumsy fall emerges a tiny green dragon, yelling indignantly at the insolence of being treated like that right after having chosen that vessel. Having zero patience for illusions, Legion pulls his pistol and aims it right at the bizarre creature. The beast just lets out an ironic laugh, judging the guy to be as ignorant as the other mortals of the original world. Full of pride and striking a pose of grandeur, the little monster explains that his current tiny form is just the peak of countless life cycles. He continues to belittle the soldier, saying that all this glory must seem like an illusion to a brute with no magical culture. As his only answer, the sergeant cocks the firearm with a very threatening click. Sweating bullets in front of the iron barrel, the little critter instantly changes his tune, trying to flatter his partner's supposed bravery and smarts. Ignoring the ridiculous change in tone, the MC assesses the unknown environment and asks where he ended up. With a very serious and analytical posture, the recruit questions if by chance he ended up passing away in the camp attack. Adopting a very gloomy tone, the small reptile confirms that things did indeed take that tragic path. Genuinely worried about the others, the guy asks about the fate of his squad and that defenseless kid. The little creature puffs up with anger, upset that his new lackey is wasting this glorious second chance, caring about such silly and personal matters. Taking advantage of the opening, the human simply tightens his grip on the pistol, keeping his aim very steady on the loudmouth. Sensing the real danger, the little dragon steps back terrified once again, confessing that he has no clue what happened to the other people. In his internal thoughts, the beast analyzes how intimidating that mortal human can be. The critter is impressed by the fact that the soldier didn't bow before his aura, and still dominated the conversation without even flinching. Still suspicious of this twisted story, the sergeant presses him, demanding an explanation about being summoned by someone who claims to know nothing. The magical being admits that he really did make the choice of partner, but confides that it wasn't his own power that performed the interdimensional transport. He frustratedly recalls the moment when he was defeated by the overwhelming force of the golden rival in the past. Right after that, his essence was left wandering completely lost in the darkness of the afterlife. His vision was already fading forever in the middle of that infinite and hopeless void. It was then that a peculiar notification woke him out of nowhere, guiding him to use the resources of another world through an innovative system. At that exact moment, a screen appeared asking him to choose his ideal creator, and he pointed his claw, sealing the duo's fate. The small green lizard gets excited telling his version of the facts, calling the military recruit a great predestined hero. He enthusiastically reinforces that this human will be directly responsible for helping him retake control of the forests. In the little monster's imagination, the MC possesses the cold and calculating intellect of a very wise master. He also flaunts the fierce and relentless soul of a true natural-born combatant who never backs down. Bringing expectations back to reality, the creature concludes that his analysis of that animal caretaker was flawless. Full of confidence, the scaly companion mutters to himself that he picked the perfect ally to carry out his ultimate payback. Not giving a darn about the delusions of grandeur, Legion takes his cell phone out of his pocket and asks, intrigued, about this voice called the Bixby system. A familiar notification sound plays on the soldier's device, greeting the new user courteously. Reading his own smartphone's glowing screen, the man quietly repeats the instructions on accessing the tools of the new universe. Hearing the electronic response, the mystic being breaks down into loud, emotional tears, revering the divine clarity of the great creator who runs everything. Showing no surprise or bother at all with the drama, the guy continues to operate the touchscreen normally. Filled with rage, the lizard deduces that the cosmic ruler decided to intervene in the world, because that presumptuous rival broke the balance of the races. A new alert grabs both of their attention, asking the player to select his starting race on the virtual panel. The holographic windows show illustrative images highlighting human freedom, the dwarves' power of creation, and the elves' supposed nobility of introspection. Completely outraged by the offered magical attributes, the dragon tells nobility to take a hike, yelling that the only good elf is an eliminated. The small green lizard continues his fiery speech, claiming that the green shall fight and that the orcs are the true warriors of the battlefield. The sergeant analyzes the phone screen and questions the choice of that specific race. Without any delay, the system officially confirms that the orc race has been selected. He lets out a sound of surprise and looks at his small companion, not quite understanding the situation. The artificial intelligence notifies that the surplus values from the uncivilized race were turned into attribute points, greatly increasing leadership and charisma. Right then, a magic circle appears under the soldier's feet, while the system announces the activation of the Tamer title and the preparation for transfer. The guy gets completely confused, asking what these sudden taming attributes mean. A colossal and imposing aura of the ancient master of the forest rises behind the recruit. The magical spirit declares that the golden twilight is coming to an end, so that the green dawn can finally be reborn. The mystic creature summons the hero from another world to rise against the great enemy Pride. Asking for direct help, the dragon demands that the sergeant resurrect him and build a new, relentless green legion. Being pulled by the dimensional portal, the human hears that this is his great destiny. But the entity soon realizes that the recruit isn't paying the slightest attention to the warning. The greenish orb is left floating all alone in the middle of that magical flash. Right after, a huge pillar of energy shoots up, and the transfer is initiated at full force. Falling through the dimensional void, the MC reaches his arm out trying to grab the egg, while reaffirming his desire to live taking care of little creatures. He laments that this was his last request before the system intervened so drastically. Totally frustrated with the situation, the guy realizes that the artificial intelligence didn't quite hear his plea correctly. The bizarre glitch completely ignored where and which beings he wished to raise in his peaceful day-to-day life. Waking up in a damp environment, the military man wonders if that place is the afterlife. He feels his own body sinking into a dark ocean, while his military gear slips out of his reach. A notification informs him that a slime was tamed and is evolving into a mutant specimen after devouring an item from the other world. The sergeant reaches out his hand, noticing that something warm and wet is wrapping all around him. The gelatinous monster's mutant evolution process is successfully completed after absorbing the heavy weaponry. The bizarre creature reaches a new level thanks to the direct effect of having swallowed that tactical gear. Choking on the strange liquid, the man panics because he can't breathe. Suddenly, he pops up coughing and gasping for air in the middle of a dark forest under the moonlight. Still panting on the dirt ground, the recruit realizes he's holding a very colorful round little creature. The little monster lets out a friendly sound, staring at its new owner with huge eyes. The calm is interrupted by a piercing scream of agony coming from somewhere nearby. The recruit looks at his own hands, confused by the sticky and strange texture he just felt. Totally amazed, he notices that his physical body has changed drastically. Now standing up, the guy sports pointy features and bluish skin, without understanding what happened to him. Panic takes over as he tries to process all this craziness that altered his appearance. The slime bounces excitedly next to him, giving the soldier a huge scare. Out of pure combat instinct, he quickly reaches for his waist looking for his defense. But he gets even more shocked when he realizes that his entire military arsenal has disappeared from his body. On the ground, the cute little monster peacefully chews on a dark, soft object. The little creature makes a funny noise and spits back only one of the sergeant's tactical gloves. Terrified, the guy deduces that the jelly swallowed his stuff and concludes that this critter is very dangerous. Sweating bullets, he decides to take advantage of the opening, while the little thing is entertained with the fabric. However, while trying to escape quickly, his foot kicks right into the mystic orb that was lying on the ground. Without a second thought, he bends down and picks up the artifact very carefully. The little monster notices its owner moving and lets out a curious noise. Holding the precious object, the hero flees through the forest while the jelly critter hops right behind him. The MC runs at top speed through the dense woods trying to catch his breath. Suddenly, a quick flash cuts through the forest's darkness, drawing his attention to danger. An arrow grazes past his face, putting him on high alert regarding the ambush. Before he can react, a green creature jumps out of nowhere demanding that he stop immediately. The little invader raises a sharp blade and charges furiously, aiming straight for the victim. The recruit widens his eyes in fear, not having enough time to dodge the sudden attack. Just then, the slime bravely jumps in front of its master to intercept the blow. The little creature hits the soldier's chest and begins to glow intensely in a transformation process. The impact of the enemy weapon bounces violently off a newly formed force barrier. The attacker fails miserably as he hits the tactical vest that the little monster recreated on the hero's body. Taking advantage of the perfect defense, the guy focuses energy into his hand while the jelly molds itself swiftly. The system announces the skill is complete, revealing a shiny and flawless piece of heavy weaponry. With sharp instincts, he steadies his aim and activates his new lethal combat capability. The gun barrel points directly at the enemy monster's face relentlessly. With a loud bang, he pulls the trigger and dispatches the small threat with surgical precision. Other hidden green invaders watch their buddies defeat and are totally terrified. Far away from there, in a rustic shack, an elderly peasant is startled by the sound of a gunshot coming from outside. In the night sky, a huge greenish presence tears through the air, making the birds fly. A mysterious warrior picks up the noise of the conflict with her long ears very precisely. Acting fast, the hooded young woman skillfully jumps down to the ground ready to investigate. Hidden in the dense shadows, she observes the surroundings with extreme caution. The girl reveals her noble pose, holding the hilt of her sword ready for any trouble. The dawn lights up an isolated cave while strange mumbles echo from outside. Two green prisoners grumble in despair, hanging upside down by thick ropes. Unable to escape the trap, the wild duo keeps whining and crying out for help. The blue-skinned sergeant just tells the captives to shut it with a cold posture. He warns that he doesn't want to chat and asks who gave them permission to open their mouths like that. The little creatures shrink in fear right away, totally submissive to his presence. With the situation under control, the guy sits near the campfire to organize his camp and his items. Next to him, the small gelatinous companion bounces happily, celebrating the new day. Sitting in the dark, the sergeant analyzes the situation, trying to understand how he's going to deal with all of it. Suddenly, a weird noise cuts through the silence of the night, catching his attention. The little slime jumps with full force onto the soldier, sticking to his shoulder to try and warn him of danger. A fast and furious movement tears through the air, coming straight from the shadows. Appearing out of nowhere, a green invader tries to strike the hero with a knife in a cowardly way. But the gelatinous companion glows intensely, taking over its owner's defense right away. The artificial intelligence warns that the little creature is perfectly transforming into a military weapon. Facing the gun barrel, the attacker realizes he made a terrible mistake and freezes in fear. Wasting no time, the MC activates his special skill, focusing completely on his aim. With great confidence, the soldier cocks the gun with a fast triple action. At that, a powerful shot crosses the environment, leaving an impressive red flash. The impact hits the invader squarely, throwing him far away with a scream of pain. Keeping a steady posture, the guy remains on alert in case more enemies appear in the forest. Hidden nearby, the other little green monsters watch their buddies fall in total shock. Desperate at the military man's absurd strength, one of them turns his back and tries to run away. Trying to save his own skin, the little monster trips through the bushes during the escape. However, the hero catches up to him quickly and lands a heavy blow to end the combat. Observing the enemies on the ground, the guy keeps his aim locked, ensuring security. He pants heavily, trying to calm his nerves after that sudden ambush. Just then, the pistol starts to lose its military shape in a very weird way. Melting completely in his hands, the weapon turns back into that slime from before. With the day now bright, Legion writes on a notepad evaluating the critter's friendly behavior. The sergeant concludes that the creature can copy objects until it runs totally out of energy. He also notices that the firepower is non-lethal, dropping significantly in performance in practice, being enough for only a few shots, just like what happened with the two prisoners tied up right there. Sitting on the rock with his cell phone, the MC tries to communicate with the artificial intelligence. The guy asks exactly where he is and what he should do to survive in the mountains. But the system just displays a warning on the screen that it cannot find an appropriate answer in the database. Frustrated with the situation, he lets out a heavy sigh, noticing that the basic functions also crapped out. The morning calm is cut short when the little slime accidentally bumps into the dragon egg. Staring at the greenish shell, the hero remembers everything he went through to get there. The memory of the mystic dragon asking to be resurrected and build a legion invades his mind. He figures he became a cheap mercenary for that weird entity to accomplish its goals. Turning his attention to the tied-up captives, the soldier decides to act. Confused by those beings, he asks directly if they are dangerous aliens. The small creatures just shiver with fear, surprised to hear their native language. Losing his patience right off the bat, the guy steps forward demanding that they start talking. He realizes that the cultural barrier prevents any decent communication with the inhabitants. Watching the jelly bounce on the shell, he thinks hatching that egg is the only logical way out. But for this plan to work, the sergeant knows his absolute priority is to stay alive. Supporting the idea, the system decrees that the main objective is to find a base of operations. Without messing around, the intelligence defines that the search must be immediate and without breaks. Right over there, the little green monsters yell nervously while focusing on their punishment. They dig the dirt non-stop with their bare hands, throwing dust everywhere. Watching the forced labor, Legion wonders what the biggest threat in that place could be. Hitting the ground hard with a rock, the prisoners finish digging the deep hole. The sergeant analyzes the mixed rations and the rustic blankets the invaders were carrying. He reaches out to his slime, concluding that those attackers were just scouts far from the main group. With the command, the gelatinous companion masterfully takes the form of the tactical pistol. The guy knows enemy reinforcements could arrive at any moment and needs data urgently. Walking toward the frightened duo, he decides to take a visual approach. Using a small twig, the soldier draws a stick figure on the ground and points. In a very simple way, he informs the creatures that the scribble represents him in the story. Right after, he unceremoniously points to the other two smaller figures next to it. Staring down the hostages, the hero makes it very clear that those drawings are the two of them. Finishing the improvised map in the dust, he quickly sketches some huts. The military man directly asks where their group's main village is located. The duo merely exchanges confused and terror-filled looks, not knowing how to respond. One of them goes into absolute panic and starts stuttering desperately, pointing at nothing. The other prisoner also freaks out from the pressure, screaming in his own language non-stop. The small creature steps back terrified as it notices the gun barrel aiming at its face. With an unforgiving posture, the guy grabs the critter's attention to give an ultimatum. He stares at the natives very coldly, promising severe punishment for disobedience. Pointing again at the drawing, the hero warns that the weapon will be fired if they stay mute. As a tragic result, he warns that they will end up tossed inside those fresh graves. Understanding the life-threatening danger, the little monster hastily raises its arm toward the mountain. The sergeant memorizes the route, realizing that the enemy base is much further away than he imagined. Satisfied with getting the information, he walks calmly back to his things. Hidden amidst the vegetation, a mysterious girl spies on the movement very attentively. Unaware of the observer, the MC tosses 2 slices of jerky as a reward. The prisoners attack the food eagerly, chewing the pieces quickly. Suddenly, the creatures are startled, feeling a drastic change run through their bodies. The hero jumps in surprise as he sees a glowing aura completely take over the duo in that same second. The magic flash illuminates the entire camp, spreading energy near his gear. The system announces on the glowing screen that the snack made the 2 warriors level up in an instant. The magic flash confirms that the 2 warriors from the Panya tribe have been officially tamed by the intelligence system. Totally surprised by the unexpected notification, the sergeant realizes he just learned basic demonic language. Hidden among the bushes nearby, the hooded elf goes into absolute shock upon witnessing that bizarre scene. Without a second thought, the spy turns around and runs off at full speed through the dark woods. Using her telepathy communication magic, Celia makes an emergency contact, reporting the situation to the elders of her race. The spiritual council of the elves answers the call immediately and orders the young warrior to pass on the crucial information. Kneeling in reverence, she details her current position on the outskirts of the dark forest near human territory. With a voice full of urgency, the girl reveals she has found a very unusual orc roaming the area. Far from there, the military man stays still at the camp, evaluating the reactions of his new greenish subordinates. Resuming the report, the elf explains to the council that this blue-skinned being is perfectly controlling the green dragon's supreme magic. Faced with this bombshell revelation, the great spiritual leaders fall into a deep and highly judgmental silence. Feeling the pressure of the environment, the spy keeps her head bowed, waiting patiently for an answer from her superiors. Breaking the tension of the moment, one of the entities calls the girl by her name with a tone of extreme doubt. The spiritual council ironically questions the current age of the warrior, who lost the ability to use her bow and arrow. Quite confused by the out-of-context question, Celia replies that she has lived for over 150 years. The elder lets out a drawn-out sigh, showing enormous disappointment in the young subordinate's answer. He complains bitterly that in the orders past, there were no young people so undisciplined and prone to making up stories. The elf is left understanding absolutely nothing as she is treated with so much contempt by her own masters. At that moment, the great leader Callion personally appears before the magical projection, cutting the conversation in half. The imposing, long-haired commander approaches the spiritual entities, asking why he was summoned. With no patience for nonsense, the elder gives Callion a severe scolding for not being able to properly control his soldiers' actions. The spirit mocks the situation, asking if it makes any logical sense for a mere orc to use the ancestral power of the master of the forest. Leaving the annoying problem in the leader's hands, the council ends the magical communication, vanishing into thin air. Callion massages his own forehead, completely exhausted, and calls the kneeling warrior with a much softer tone. He crouches down to the girl's eye level, admitting that he perfectly understands her desire for revenge due to the tragic injury that ruined her arm. But the commander harshly reinforces that the ancient green dragon was wiped from history without leaving a single trace. Recalling the brutal attack of the original golden being, he states that spreading rumors about the rivals' return borders on blasphemy. Desperate at being discredited, the girl tries to argue, guaranteeing she witnessed the green magic with her own eyes. Coldly ignoring the plea, Callion turns his back, irritated by her audacity to report something so absurd directly to the high command. With a relentless posture, the leader ends the subject once and for all and orders the elf to leave the area. Swallowing her pride and sorrow, Celia agrees to the order while boiling with rebellion inside. Totally frustrated with the unprovoked humiliation, she punches the dirt ground, taking out her built-up anger. The young woman curses her superiors, calling them all stubborn old men for ignoring such a crucial warning for their people. She bitterly concludes that her words lost all their value just because she can no longer be a useful archer. Fueled by hatred, the spy promises to defeat that suspicious threat and take concrete proof right into the council's hands. With her sharp hunter's instinct, the elf swears to erase any remnant of the green dragon that crosses her path. Meanwhile, in the dense forest, a dinosaur-like predator fiercely attacks a giant bird right in front of everyone. Right after, the wild creature runs away at top speed, making a lot of noise through the dark bushes. One of the little green monsters points excitedly, explaining to the hero that this fleeing critter has delicious meat. The predatory hunting doesn't stop, and a colossal land crab appears dragging its heavy stone shell across the terrain. The lackey evaluates the new crawling monster with disgust, warning that this kind of creature tastes off. The calm lasts only a moment until a massive beast with spikes on its back lets out a deafening roar in the area. Trembling with pure fear, the native warns that this strong meat is way beyond their capacity to take on. The prisoners frustratingly reveal that they failed the tribe's coming-of-age ritual miserably because they only managed to bring back monster droppings. Hearing the sad survival stories, the sergeant understands that the harmless duo was kicked out of their own home without pity. Even though they were rejected by their family, the two little lackeys celebrate happily, claiming that at least they met their true master. The MC tries to cut the sudden intimacy, saying he isn't anyone's leader while trying to push away the hug on his legs. The little critters stubbornly refuse the rejection, swearing that he belongs to the exact same demonic race as they do. To try and prove this crazy argument, the little monster compares his greenish skin to the sergeant's blue arms. Completely out of patience for this twisted and needy logic, the guy yanks his leg away from the sticky contact. But the prisoners insist on the attachment, claiming there is no color discrimination since everyone there is a child of the same forest. The conversation completely dies as the camp's bonfire burns, warming the area under the light of the full moon. In the middle of the silent early morning hours, the military man stands guard alone near the flames, while his new allies snore peacefully on the ground. Reflecting on the absurd dangers of that day, he remembers the brutal violence of the predatory animals fighting over territory. The sinister image of the walking giant crab makes him absolutely certain that a threat lurks in every inch of that place. Sitting on an isolated rock, the sergeant pets the small slime while giving up on trying to find a signal on his broken cell phone. He internally confesses that, if this had happened in the past, he would be completely fascinated to catalog those exotic creatures. Watching the harmless little creatures sleeping piled up, he feels a strange heaviness in his heart at life's irony. A cloud of genuine sadness takes over his features as he remembers the true reason he became such a cold man. The psychological trauma of the cruel war shaped the guy's mind, forcing him to live forever suspicious and without inner peace. The flames of the makeshift fire keep dancing and cracking frantically, lighting up part of the night camp. Suddenly, the peaceful sight of the fire distorts, bringing back the terrifying memory of a colossal fire destroying everything. The lived nightmare shows the exact moment when the animal shelter where he worked was bombed by enemy artillery and collapsed. Amidst the absolute destruction and iron beams, a box of vital supplies melts slowly, being consumed by the extreme heat. In shock over the uncontrollable tragedy, the past version of the MC screams in pure despair watching his peaceful life turn to ashes. The fire spreads mercilessly, devouring the space while the caged animals scream in agony with nowhere to run. Completely broken and powerless before the war disaster, he just reaches out his hand, crying over the loss of the only things he loved. Aggressively cutting through this traumatic trance, the sound of a branch being stepped on near the hideout tears through the early morning. Triggered by basic survival instincts, the military man goes on high alert, completely shifting his emotional state to focus on combat. Sensing the imminent threat, the small gelatinous companion wakes up with a quick jump, going straight to its owner's reliable hands. Taking on its lethal form in a fraction of a second, the soldier cocks the loaded gun toward the shadows, demanding the invader identify themselves. Stepping out of the dense vegetation, two human patrollers get a massive scare when they come face to face with the supposed monster pointing something back at them. The mood in the makeshift camp gets tense enough to be cut with a knife as the three stare each other down near the lit fire. Analyzing the fabric of their clothes and their physical features, the MC feels a momentary relief upon realizing they are also humans. But the hope for a friendly chat disappears instantly when the guards draw their swords, yelling violent threats in a completely unknown language. Trying to calm things down, the sergeant steps back, asking the guards to hold on a second. But the two little green monsters jump in front of him, absolutely furious at the threat. Charging forward to protect their master, they go after the patrollers while the guy yells desperately for them to stop. Just then, a sudden beam of light comes down from the sky, lighting up the forest floor. The elven warrior appears, slicing through the air with impressive agility. Landing perfectly right in the middle of the conflict, she places herself between the lackeys and the humans. Wasting no time, the girl spins her body, delivering a kick charged with magic. The fast strike creates a powerful arc of energy heading toward the small invaders. The attack hits the green defenders head-on with crushing force. With the impact, the two are thrown far away while the young woman resumes her noble stance. The MC widens his eyes, shocked to see his helpers flying like that. Right behind her, the patrollers are completely paralyzed, admiring the arrival of their savior. Glaring at the target with hatred, she calls the orc the scum of the green dragon and demands he carve her name in his mind before his end. Walking with firm steps through the darkness, the hooded warrior reveals her identity with great pride. She formally introduces herself as the prey of the light, declaring her name with an unshakable fury. The elf points her sword, declaring the defeat of that supposed evil shaman and his servants, promising in the name of her golden deity that she will wipe their existence from there. Maintaining her intimidating pose, the girl repeats her majestic title to make sure the enemy gets the message. The sergeant watches that whole dramatic and exaggerated speech while protecting the fallen lackey, while the warrior swears to annihilate the demonic presence from the forest once and for all. However, the blue-skinned guy is left completely clueless about what is going on. To his ears, the threats from the spy and the patrollers just sound like a bunch of meaningless noises. Trying to solve everything peacefully, he raises his hands, swearing he doesn't want to fight and tries to communicate. But the human guards interpret the peaceful gesture as typical behavior of an irrational monster. The elf gets into a combat stance, telling the men to fall back because she thinks the enemy is going to cast a mind control spell. Realizing that the mess is only getting worse, the military man notices the adversary charging quickly with her blade. Without many options for dialogue, he decides the only way out is to fire a warning shot to scare the group. With quick reflexes, the soldier cocks the gun, aiming firmly upwards. But the sound of the trigger clicking and failing sends a terrible chill down the hero's spine. He finds out the hard way that the little gelatinous monster ran totally out of energy to attack. The tactical pistol melts in his hands, turning back into just an exhausted little gel. Taking advantage of the opening, the warrior coldly warns that the enemy's incantation ends there. With a powerful leap, she launches herself through the air, ready to end the confrontation. The young woman comes down hard, swinging her glowing sword in a relentless vertical strike. Suddenly, the little green monster heroically throws itself in front of the blade to save its owner. The two human patrollers watch the scene, completely shocked by the creature's loyalty. The slicing attack hits the lackey's arm squarely, causing a painful wound. The little critter screams in agony, falling to the ground due to the heavy impact. Utterly desperate, the sergeant kneels down to protect his greenish helper from danger. The elf herself is paralyzed for a second, surprised that she hit the wrong target. Seeing his companion hurt like that, the MC's blood boils with pure outrage. Acting on survival instinct, he twists his body, throwing a devastating punch at the girl. The attack tears through the wind with absurd force while the spy hastily backs away. Quite scared by the sudden brutality, she barely manages to dodge the massive fist. Giving no rest, the soldier shoves the useless barrel of the gun right toward her face to intimidate her. Being pressured by the violent charge, the young woman makes an agile leap backwards, seeking distance. She lands sliding across the grass while trying to recover her balance and posture. Coughing a bit from the pressure of the blow, the spy grumbles, indignant at the enemy's audacity. Feeling her pride wounded, she flips out, yelling that she will use all her power against that inferior monster. Gathering an impressive amount of magical energy, the warrior summons the spirits of the wind to cover her body, demanding that the magic punish her adversaries, while the military man watches the glowing aura grow. Just then, blood begins to drip heavily from the MC's hand straight onto the dark dirt. Kneeling on the ground, he pants in pain while the little lackey calls out for him, very worried. The guy stares at his own arm, completely frustrated with his current body's limiting weakness. Trembling quite a bit, he realizes his muscles have locked up, and his hands simply won't obey commands anymore. Seeing the gravity of the situation, the injured little monster begs its master to flee from there as fast as possible. Proving to be extremely loyal, the little creature warns it will buy some time and try to hold off the magical offensive. But the hooded girl is already advancing like a glowing lightning bolt, cutting through the forest's darkness. The sergeant turns his face in shock, realizing he has no way to react in time. The warrior crosses the space at a surreal speed, leaving the hero astounded by such agility. Holding the magical tool with difficulty, he wonders if that will be his last useful shot. Gritting his teeth, the soldier focuses all his attention so as not to miss the fast target. The elf runs in circles around him, creating a very confusing whirlwind of wind and dust. Not being fooled by the absurd speed, the guy tracks her path with a steady aim. He spins his body quickly, waiting for the exact moment the opponent will strike. Suddenly appearing from his blind spot, the girl prepares the deciding blow right next to him. However, the hero pulls the trigger first, firing a flash of energy in a moment of pure tension. The little green lackey watches the risky counterattack, holding its breath from being so nervous. Just then, a metallic object falls spinning through the air, landing right in the frightened helper's hands. The little monster widens its eyes in confusion when it realizes it caught the magical adornment that was on the opponent's forehead. Having her accessory broken by the precise shot, the young woman loses her balance and the spell abruptly Completely dazed by the breaking of the magic, she tumbles onto the dirt ground, bested by the adversary's tactic. Still keeping his armed stance, the military man pants in relief, hoping he has settled the conflict for good. Totally devoid of strength, the gelatinous pistol comes undone, slipping through the guy's trembling fingers. The sergeant's body gives into extreme exhaustion and he falls to his knees while the little critter approaches, worried. The small green lackey approaches desperately, gathering the remains of the gelatinous companion from the ground. Holding the melted little creature in its hands, it cries a lot, thinking its friend met its end. Completely exhausted, the sergeant stares at his own dirty fingers, feeling the weight of that crushing situation. This moment of powerlessness brings back painful memories of him holding an injured squad mate. The tragic battlefield memory triggers a terrible response in the guy's mind. Immediately, the system displays a negative effect alert, confirming that the war trauma has been activated. Unable to handle the psychological pressure, he lets out a deafening scream, activating the special frenzy skill. The military man's face twists into a bestial expression as he completely loses his sanity. Feeling the murderous aura overflow, the two greenish helpers shrink back on the ground, terrified. On the other side, the human patrollers run away through the forest to save their own skins. Dominated by uncontrollable fury, the MC takes a heavy step, advancing across the terrain. With his body covered in an intense red energy, he turns into a true mindless combat machine. Walking blindly, the hero stops right in front of the elven warrior's unconscious body. Without any hesitation, he raises his monstrous hand, ready to deliver a lethal blow to the ground. But a familiar and very quiet sound echoes in the camp, interrupting the imminent tragedy. The hate-filled fist freezes in midair as soon as the soldier hears that little noise coming from below. Slowly, reason takes back control and the sinister energy fades from his eyes. Looking down at the dark dirt, he notices a soft light glowing right near the scared lackey. The little slime not only survived but now sports a vibrant yellowish color, calling out to its owner. Just then, the other pieces of jelly that were scattered about begin to move independently. The dropped cell phone emits a bright glow as the system detects an anomaly in the taming process. The screen shows the comforting memory of an old friend, advising him to live doing what he truly loves. Materializing this genuine desire, a new pointy little monster appears out of nowhere, brimming with energy. Right next to it, a pinkish version also comes to life, confirming the activation of a special trait. The panel reveals that the original creature used the fission reproduction skill to multiply. Holding the new life forms in his arms, the sergeant is left not understanding how that happened. All that dark stress evaporates instantly, giving way to a pleasant surprise with the colorful little critters. Time passes and the morning light illuminates the forest while the elf wakes up, feeling her body heavy. The young woman leans on the grass, trying to regain her senses after fainting in the middle of the clash. Quite disoriented by the situation, the girl looks around, asking where she ended up. The terrifying memory of that furious monster ready to attack her invades her mind with full force. The scare makes the spy's heart race as she recalls the danger she faced the night before. With a quick jump, the girl gets up, determined to complete her mission whatever it takes. She repeats to herself that she needs to warn her superiors about the dark power of that supposed shaman. However, upon reaching her hand to her forehead, the warrior misses her most important piece of gear. An absurd panic takes over her as she confirms that her communication tiara has disappeared. Without the magical artifact, the young woman desperately realizes that all her connections to the tribe have been cut off. For the first time in over a century of life, the elf finds herself completely isolated and aimless. The image of the gunshot destroying her sacred adornment flashes painfully through her head. The fear of the unknown dominates the girl, making her step back terrified as she loses her balance. Falling to her knees on the grass, she cries profusely, begging for the help of the great maternal tree. Hugging her own body, the warrior begs her commander not to leave her behind like that. Her emotional fragility makes her see the illusion of a gigantic green dragon about to devour her. At the peak of her despair, the spy cries out for anyone who might save her from this nightmare. At that exact moment, gentle arms hold her from behind, preventing her from fully collapsing to the ground. A serene and welcoming voice whispers to the young woman, asking her to push all that fear away. Looking up, the girl sees the figure of a handsome young man assuring her that she is finally safe. Settling the exhausted warrior near a tree, the illusion offers a bowl to clear her mind. Hypnotized by the sudden care, the spy accepts the meal, feeling immense gratitude for that voice. The friendly physical contact brings a comfort she had never experienced in her entire journey. While she drinks the warm broth, the system silently reports that a taming attempt has been initiated. Completely yielding, she wonders if the savior is a legendary angel, but the vision soon starts to distort. Returning to harsh reality, the young woman discovers that the bluish military man is the one holding the bowl. With a pragmatic stance, he warns that he can act as a friend or foe depending solely on her choices. The sergeant praises the lackey's rustic knowledge, admitting that natural medicine really works very well. Processing the information that she just swallowed a mix made by those weird beings, she freezes. With extreme disgust, the girl spits the magical drink with all her might right into the hero's face. The sun is already shining high on the horizon, illuminating the rocky mountains of that inhospitable territory. Now tied firmly in a sleeping bag, the elf struggles, demanding to be released immediately. Hopping clumsily through the grass, the prisoner swears she will put an end to all those wild monsters. Calmly wiping the mess off his face, the military man warns that the long-eared girl needs to submit if she wants to stay alive. The warrior tries to talk back with aggressive insults, but her voice is cut off very abruptly. An invisible command forces the girl's mouth shut, leaving her terrified that she's the victim of mind control magic. The camp falls into absolute silence as the young woman is forced to obey the order to stay kneeling. Impressed by the scene, the green lackey cheers, praising the master's greatness for dominating that arrogant prisoner. Completely confused by the compliment, the hero wonders how he ended up performing this supposed bodily control. Seeking to understand the situation, he pulls his cell phone out of his pocket to check the latest notifications received. A quick memory shows the exact moment he got suspicious of the gross ingredients used by the makeshift healers in that cure. Even afraid of making things worse, the guy gave in to the insistence of the improvised healers to try to wake her up. The glowing screen shows that the primary attempt at taming through that suspicious soup had actually failed. Due to the immense natural willpower of the elven race, the system had to bypass her mind and focus solely on the girl's physical body. As a result, the panel confirms that the motor control was a success and unlocks her native language for the user. Reading the technical terms, the sergeant reflects on the practical meaning of this special ability in his original world. In his past life, raising and training small exotic reptiles was what people called taming. Staring at the little monsters around him, the MC finally understands that he turned everyone there into his new pets. Testing his new skill, the sergeant orders the tied-up prisoner to sit on the ground. Right after, he commands the girl to stand back up. Confirming his absolute control, the guy tells the elf to sit down one more time. The young woman grumbles angrily, trying to resist the magic, until the military man gives her permission to speak. Utterly furious at such humiliation, the warrior yells that she'd rather lose her life in the name of her people, and swears to destroy that supposed filthy shaman. With no patience for the drama, the hero tells her to be quiet, making the girl click her tongue in rebellion. While the prisoner struggles on the ground, the MC marvels at the fact that he actually managed to tame and take physical control of her. He keeps asking himself if this absurd capability was just another of the skills he gained when he was thrown into that weird world. A quick memory surfaces showing his human past, recalling the moment he passed out in the middle of the conflict and even his old wounds were healed. But the sergeant vaguely remembers feeling a totally inhuman strength and fury taking over his being. That dark sensation directly reminds him of the worst traumas he experienced on the battlefields. Pushing those heavy thoughts away, the guy snaps back to reality, offering a tired smile. He lets out a heavy sigh, feeling his body sway a bit, and tries to convince himself that all of this is just pure stress. Sitting on the dirt ground near his new helpers, the hero admits to himself that he'd be lying if he said he wasn't completely confused. Holding his cell phone, he notices that inexplicable things are happening all at once, but he understands that war was always like this, and his main goal remains the same. Staring at the device's screen longingly, the soldier makes a firm commitment that he needs to survive to resolve his unfinished business. Overcome by an unshakable determination, he shouts the word survival at the top of his lungs. Jumping up, the leader calls his two greenish helpers, demanding they get into formation immediately. The military man warns with a stern expression that he still can't fully trust that duo's loyalty. The little monsters tremble with fear as they hear that, in the hero's world, only crushing strength and willpower guarantee the right to live. As a proposal, the sergeant promises to teach them how to get stronger to survive, demanding in return that they help him stay alive in that place. The heavy training begins with push-ups on the ground, where the leader makes it clear that anyone who can't keep up the pace won't be able to bring him back home in one piece. The intense routine continues with night runs through the forest, with the MC warning that they haven't earned the right to call him master yet. During tactical exercises, he uses the subordinates to block charges, wanting to know if their loyalty only serves to make them human shields. Pressuring the natives in hand-to-hand combat, the military man challenges the duo to prove if they are truly worthy of being his right and left arms. Watching the sergeant block attacks easily, the elven warrior can't take her eyes off the training. The tied-up prisoner finally admits to herself that she was wrong, realizing that those aren't mere common monsters. She is completely shocked to see the gelatinous companion perfectly transform into a metal firearm. The young woman also watches in awe as the two small warriors reload tactical gear and move in flawless formation. After the brutal workout, the small squad displays an intimidating posture, fully equipped and ready for action under the hero's leadership. Staring at the blue-skinned leader's imposing presence, the spy thinks, impressed, about the level of absolute command he exercises over the group. Totally perplexed by the situation, the girl admits she's never seen anything like it in her 150 long years of life. Observing one of the little warriors shooting perfectly at the makeshift range, she concludes that he definitely doesn't act like a wild beast. The sergeant continues to coordinate the duo's shooting practice with extreme coldness and tactical precision. The non-lethal shots hit the wooden targets squarely, destroying the structures with ease. Faced with such military organization, the warrior internally judges that this supposed shaman is a truly colossal threat. Looking at her broken magical accessory tossed on the ground, the prisoner decides she needs to report this to the council as quickly as possible. Dragging herself stealthily across the grass, the elf tries to reach the destroyed tiara to restore her communication. But the military man's heavy hand firmly grabs her shoulder, warning with a dark look that it's now her turn to jump into action. Far away in a peaceful village, two desperate men come running and screaming about the presence of a scary monster. The young man informs the locals that the creature appeared on the mountain right behind the village, begging them to believe the warning. The old village chief approaches leaning on his cane, tiredly asking if they're back with that nonsense about green-skinned enemies. Nervous about the disbelief, the patroller insists it was a dangerous high-level shaman, assuring them he saw the powerful elf get completely outmatched. Fearing the worst, the peasant argues that they need to warn the local lord or at least organize a militia to defend themselves. Cutting off the panic, a hooded figure emerges from the shadows telling them to stop with that ridiculous story, asking if they think beasts would cross the ocean. The arrogant mercenary belittles the locals' fear, asking what reason such terrible beings would have to visit such an insignificant village. The climate of distrust takes over the main square while the people discuss the supposed invisible threat. Hidden in the bushes just above the settlement, the sergeant spies on the movement and orders the elf to come forward. The girl tries to resist, growling that he shouldn't give her orders, but the military man interrupts her, demanding immediate silence. Pointing discreetly at the gathered peasants down below, the hero asks the prisoner to translate what those people are discussing. Outraged by the bold request, the spy turns her face, questioning why she should help the enemy like that. Without changing his expression, the MC holds up her broken accessory, reminding her that the young woman herself called it a tiara. The guy states that whatever the history of the object is, it seems to be something very precious, and guarantees he fully intends to return it. However, he shows the colorful little monsters, warning that the creatures want compensation for having been cut into 3 pieces by her in the past clash. Taking on a laid-back posture, the sergeant says he'll give the warrior a little time to think about the offer. The suspense starts when the leader holds up his fingers, coldly starting a countdown from 3. Upon hearing the number 2, the girl panics, begging him to wait a little longer. Threatening to devour the artifact, the slime stretches its tongue while the hero firmly announces the number 1. Desperate to save her communication, the prisoner lowers her head, shouting that she accepts the deal, receiving the direct order to begin the translation work. Glaring at the bluish guy with pure hatred, the young woman calls him a demon, absolutely certain that he is a cruel and calculating monster. Swallowing her tears, the elf internally promises that as soon as she gets her long-range telepathy back, she will make that enemy taste her people's eternal hatred. Back to the discussion in the village, the old chief insists that green attacks might be common across the sea, but there the worst they face are weak beasts. Still trying to convince the settlement's leader, the patroller swears he also thought exactly like that until he saw the danger up close. The man keeps hammering the point that there's still time to mount a quick defense, catching the attention of the mercenary who mocks the idea. The blonde guard reveals his face, faking disappointment, and asks if the people don't trust the guild that protects the roads. Keeping his arrogant pose, the hired warrior reinforces that the village is entirely under the protection of the root guardians. The mercenary tries to manipulate the situation, asking what the point would be in arming civilians for no reason just to send them to certain defeat. Losing his patience, the villager accuses the guards of having a guilty conscience, calling the guild a bunch of opportunists who extort everyone at the tolls. The peasant tries to argue about how extremely hard it is for them to survive by producing fabrics, but is harshly interrupted. In a fit of rage, the blonde protector lands a violent blow right on the local's face, yelling at him to shut his mouth. From the painful impact, the man falls to the ground groaning in pain, while the other peasants desperately beg for the commotion to end. Grabbing the victim by the collar aggressively, the mercenary tells the guy to calm down and agree with the village chief's decision. All this cowardice is watched from the front row by the sergeant and his group, who remain hidden in the tall vegetation. The warrior glares at the military man, blaming him for all that tragedy, accusing him of being unscrupulous for letting the innocent suffer. Completely ignoring the moralistic lecture, the leader points to the village and coldly orders his helper to open fire using non-lethal power. Down in the village, the blonde mercenary tells the villager to forcefully shut his mouth, adopting an extremely aggressive stance. Without any mercy, the hired guard lands a heavy punch straight to the peasant's face. The surrounding crowd goes into total panic, while the attacker holds the fallen victim by the collar. Suddenly, a loud noise cuts through the air, making the mercenary let go of the man and warn in fear that the monsters have finally arrived. Far away on the hill, the greenish helper reports the success of the warning shot, getting the order from the sergeant to evacuate the area immediately. The elven prisoner is confused by the sudden retreat command. Wasting no time, one of the group's slimes perfectly transforms into an agile yellow reptilian mount. The little lackey monster runs excitedly across the field, holding his weapon tightly. Right behind, the second companion advances with the same energy to follow the leader's strategy. With a precise jump, the first little warrior climbs onto the yellow lizard's back. The other helper also secures his spot on the mount very nimbly. The duo speeds through the vegetation, riding the fast creatures created by the system. Keeping total focus, one of the lackeys adopts a professional shooting stance while in full motion. The mutant lizard runs with its mouth threateningly open as it crosses the terrain. The beast shows a sharp and focused gaze, proving to be a perfect mount for the tactical escape. During the route, the little lackey fires precise shots without losing his balance. The greenish helper keeps his aim locked, showing that he absorbed the combat tactics very well. The non-lethal shots continue being fired in perfect sync with the beast's movements. The duo maneuvers the mount side by side, executing a flawless formation in the middle of the forest. In a quick move, one of them jumps off the back, drawing his tactical knife for a close-range attack. The little monster shows all his skill, landing rehearsed blows in the battle simulation. The blade slices the air with dexterity, proving the success of the intensive training imposed by the sergeant. The two apply advanced immobilization and hand-to-hand combat techniques right on the ground. Finishing the exercise, the little warrior masters the yellow lizard, proud of his own performance in training. The lackey shows off his firm posture and newly acquired lethal technique under the hero's watchful eye. Watching all this, the military man remembers how the long war in his world depleted human resources. In that chaotic era, all the qualified instructors took the front line to teach the younger ones. Professionals from all fields came together with the single goal of helping the inexperienced recruits get back home alive. The sergeant recalls his own past in the army, where everyone played their part, giving their all for survival. The memory of his own tired face reinforces the weight of the responsibility he now carries as a leader. Returning to the present, Legion understands that for the team to survive properly, they will need to secure shelter and supplies in a village. The MC tends to his helper's wound, knowing that operating without rest always results in tragic losses. During the break at camp, the leader evaluates the group's current firepower for a possible invasion. He concludes with satisfaction that his green lackeys absorbed the tactical training much faster than expected. The friendly slimes also evolved, managing to hold various shapes and provide enough ammo for the squad. The sergeant leans against the mutant lizard, reflecting on his own crucial role in that unusual team. Feeding the beast fresh meat, he confirms that the condition to tame the creatures is establishing hierarchy and then feeding them. The animal swallows the meal in one go, accepting the human's dominance in a tame and loyal way. Pleased with the result, the military man names the new Mount Caillou, consolidating his combat strength. The group advances through the forest riding the lizards, ready to successfully carry out small-scale operations. Despite all this progress, the hero looks at his turned-off cell phone, lamenting the lack of a vital resource. The absence of a long-distance communication network is the major hurdle for perfect tactical efficiency. Deep in thought, he muses about the complex strategies that would be possible with a radio, until he catches the prisoner's attention. The elf complains furiously, stating that she has already translated everything and demanding her precious adornment back immediately. The guy holds the broken golden object, confirming with indifference if that was what the girl wanted so badly. The warrior stares at the piece of metal with an anxious and almost desperate look. Hiding her nervousness, she tries to turn the tables, asking why he is so obsessed with a simple ornament. The sergeant notices the girl's tone change and pays attention to her words. Analyzing the enemy's behavior, the young woman reflects on the actions of that supposed filthy shaman. Celia perfectly understands that the rigorous training passed down to the lackeys wasn't just wild brutality. The spy's gaze sharpens as she notes that this was a structured and very dangerous military tactic. Determined to save her people, she mentally reaffirms the urgency to report everything to the Council of Light. Using all her deceitfulness, the prisoner points to the tiara, lying that it's a precious heirloom from her late mother. Inside, she plans to use the adornment's telepathy to call for reinforcements and crush that blue monster's head. The camp falls into an awkward silence as the military leader just stares at the hostage without saying a single word. Feeling the weight of the silence, the girl grinds her teeth, frustrated for not being able to fool the adversary. The MC ignores the dramatic little act and asks directly if the object performs long-distance telepathy. Twirling the broken metal between his fingers, he questions if that thing really works like a radio communicator. With a sly smile on his face, the guy lifts the magical piece toward his own face. Surprising the warrior, he simply presses the broken tiara right in the middle of his forehead. Terrified by the reckless action, the elf reaches out her hands, yelling for him not to do that. A sudden, intense glow blinds everyone as soon as the metal touches the hero's skin. Through the magical connection, the projection of a long-haired elven commander appears in the mental space. The two men stand back-to-back inside this white, empty dimension. The imposing elven leader turns his face, sensing that something is very weird with that call. The sergeant rubs his chin, evaluating the noble figure before him without showing any intimidation. Quite confused by the silence, the spy's superior grumbles that the connection isn't working properly. The commander's magical projection remains static in the void, waiting for some report from his subordinate. Losing patience, the entity directly calls the warrior's name to get answers. Back in the forest, the prisoner goes into total shock when the military man reveals he saw absolutely nothing special in the contact. Taking the adornment off his forehead, he sincerely asks what was supposed to happen. Curious about the new toy, the green lackey jumps excitedly, asking to test the magical object too. As soon as the little warrior takes over the connection, he appears in the telepathic dimension right behind the long-haired elf and clears his throat to get attention. The commander gets a massive scare upon hearing the bizarre voice inside his sacred communication network. Totally disoriented in the white void, the elven leader desperately looks for the origin of that telepathic invasion. The prisoner screams, desperately asking them to be careful, while the two green helpers fight to see whose turn it is to use the magic object. Celia keeps cursing the little monsters for being uncivilized, but the lackey just gives a mocking laugh while holding the artifact. Just then, the small yellow slime stretches and simply swallows the golden tiara all at once. The scare is so huge that the two small warriors fall flat on their backs right away. The gelatinous critter begins to glow intensely as it absorbs the properties of the communication item. The sergeant and his group stand in complete silence, just watching the bizarre transformation happen. Finishing the process, the little monster gains a pointy shape with an antenna emitting a magical tuning sound. The elven warrior goes into absolute panic, yelling that this cannot be happening. Ignoring her despair, the lackeys jump on the slime, celebrating the success of the new form. On the other side of the telepathic line, the elven commander is left completely clueless about that mess. A gigantic, distorted projection of the yellow monster appears right in front of the leader, leaving him totally frightened. Acting on instinct, the superior draws his two glowing swords, preparing for the imminent combat. With an agile move, he delivers a powerful cross-strike against the strange apparition. But the bizarre figure just melts in the air, disappearing like smoke before being hit. Keeping his guard up, the elf indignantly wonders what the heck that thing was that just invaded his mind. Totally frustrated in the void, the commander demands to know what his subordinate has been up to. The echo of the leader's voice calling her daughter resonates while the spy collapses on the forest floor, crying out of pure shame. Holding the transformed slime, the sergeant watches the girls crying fit, not really knowing how to react. Trembling with rage, she mutters apologies to her superior, promising to end that group's lives. In a fit of blind fury, the prisoner lifts her head, yelling that she will annihilate every single one of them without any mercy. Not caring at all about her tantrum, the military man turns his back, warning that they are going out to hunt for a bit. Walking calmly through the woods, the leader focuses his attention on the gelatinous companion in his hands. The guy asks the creature directly if it really devoured that magical communication artifact. Interested in the new capabilities, he questions if the critter can transform into a radio communicator for the team. The MC's mind works fast, calculating the new tactical strategies this skill can provide. To test the idea, one of the small warriors tucks a piece of the slime into his ear like a military earpiece. The sergeant steps away and begins to count numbers through the device, demanding confirmation from the other side. With the helper's clear and perfect response, the leader shows he is very satisfied with the test's success. Making sure all preparations are complete, he officially announces the start of the squad's second combat mission. The chosen target for the tactical operation is exactly the peaceful human village nearby. The MC orders the group to occupy the designated sectors and secure a safe base, commanding everyone to push forward without stopping. Alone at the makeshift camp, the elf lets out a heavy sigh, feeling the bitter taste of failure. Kneeling and still tied up, she laments that the enemy stole the only means of communication she had. The warrior's mind pictures those organized monsters using advanced tactics and fast mounts. With wide eyes, the young woman concludes that it will be a true disaster if that squad invades the innocent village. Taken over by a sense of justice, the prisoner forces her own body, trying to break the magical control bindings. Gritting her teeth, she figures this is her best chance to break free since the blue shaman is far away. With much effort, the girl manages to plant her feet on the ground, overcoming the physical restriction imposed by the sergeant. A spark of hope shines in her eyes as she realizes she has finally gotten her movements back. Wasting no time, the spy starts hopping clumsily through the grass, trying to escape the area. However, her lack of balance takes its toll and she trips, falling face first into the dark dirt. Outraged by her own weakness, the warrior curses the situation, admitting she is being way too slow. Even on the ground, she refuses to give up and clasps her hands together, determined to use the little magic she has left. The young woman begs for the help of the wind spirits, remembering her noble title within the Army of Light. Answering the desperate call, a soft magical aura begins to wrap around the fallen girl's legs. Boiling with hatred, the spy swears she will show that monster the true relentless fury of her race. Propelled by the wind magic, the tied-up girl shoots off like a rocket, tearing through the forest at an absurd speed. She lets out a war cry as she crosses the trees, focused solely on saving the peasants from that danger. Showing an almost maniacal expression, the young woman plans to reach the village and find a way to contact the great elven society. In her delusions of revenge, she promises that the enemy will taste golden justice and turn to dust. Away from the forest, the full moon lights up the peaceful rooftops of the human village. In the main square, the blonde mercenary continues humiliating the villager, mocking the story about a supposed dangerous shaman. The hired warrior lets out a sadistic laugh, finding it impossible that monsters had used lightning magic. Flaunting his fake authority, the guild's vice-captain declares that all the roads there are under his absolute rule. The leader of the mercenaries opens his arms before the kneeling locals, demanding total submission to his order. Changing his tone, he accuses the peasants of using the monster rumors as an excuse to start a rebellion. Threatening everyone with extreme cruelty, the villain brings up the blacksmith they had already taken hostage before. With not an ounce of humanity, the man orders his subordinates to eliminate half the men and sell the rest of the families. Panic takes over the place as the thugs attack until the vice-captain asks everyone to stop for a second. The leader turns his attention to the square's entrance, noticing the tied-up elf who just slid to a halt right there. Completely exhausted from the crazy sprint, the warrior pants, unable to put a sentence together properly. Intrigued by the bizarre visit, the vice-captain approaches the prisoner, asking where she came from. Still catching her breath, the girl ignores the question and begs everyone to flee from the monsters immediately. The mercenary tells her to calm down as he bends over to examine the young woman's face more closely. Grabbing her chin invasively, the leader gets extremely excited upon confirming that she is a real elf. One of the bald thugs comments in confusion that she doesn't carry the mark of golden pride used by the dragon's subordinates. Seizing the opening, the villain mocks the girl, deducing she was banished from her own people for not having the sacred adornment. Staring deep into the spy's eyes, he calls her pathetic for being tossed aside like that. Full of bad intentions, the mercenary grabs the young woman by the tied fabric, warning that he will take her as a very special favor. The bald subordinate takes control of the hostage, impressed by how light her race manages to be. Showing off his brute strength, the man lifts the warrior with just one hand, guaranteeing she won't cause any trouble. Suddenly, the group's attention is stolen by a strange buzzing crossing the night air. Giving no time for any reaction, a fast shot hits the thug's head straight on. The brutal force of the impact throws the mercenary's body backward, knocking him to the square's floor. The vice-captain freezes in place, completely in shock as he feels the attack's shrapnel fly right into his face. The metallic sound of an empty bullet casing bouncing on the ground breaks the tense silence after the precise shot. Emerging from the forest shadows, the sergeant walks with firm steps toward the main square with his weapon in hand. Stopping right behind the fallen elf, the MC focuses his aim straight at the scared mercenaries. With an unshakable posture, the military man states bluntly that he showed up there to save her life. The prisoner looks back completely baffled by the attitude of the one she considered her worst enemy. Calling the warrior by her name, the hero decrees that he came to retake control over her and over all the villagers of that settlement. Without taking his attention off the danger ahead, he firmly rests his hand on the fallen young woman's shoulder. The spy widens her eyes, feeling an impressive familiarity in that sudden physical contact. The memory of the welcoming dream invades her mind, showing that the feeling is exactly like the touch of that gentle man from the illusion. Cutting through her thoughts, the soldier asks if the girl is hurt while keeping the area secure. At that, he politely asks the young woman to go back to working as his official translator, and she agrees instantly. With communication secured, the leader raises his pistol in the air, demanding an immediate negotiation with the invaders. The guild's vice-captain trembles from head to toe, stuttering the word negotiation. The hero lowers his guard slightly and asks if the man needs some time to think about the proposal. Aiming the gun barrel straight at the villain's face, the military man starts a countdown, saying the number 3. Focusing his aim with extreme precision, the sergeant continues the count and announces the number 2. Hidden in the brush, one of the small lackeys cocks his gun and finishes by saying the number 1. The other masked helper also takes position, locking his aim toward the human targets. Going into absolute panic at the invisible threat, the vice-captain turns his back and runs away in desperate flight. The villain runs right through his own subordinates, abandoning everyone to save his own skin. But the man ends up tripping over his own legs and falls to the ground without understanding what is happening to his body. A heavy boot stomps hard on his cape's fabric, preventing any chance of escape. The mercenary looks back with an expression of pure terror, expecting to meet his end. Outraged by the situation, 2 thugs draw their blades and charge forward, cursing the supposed evil orc for using spells. The duo runs with all their might toward the MC, ready to avenge the guild's honor. Seeing the aggressive charge, the military man pushes the elf down, ensuring her safety. Seizing the opening, he fires a quick sequence of shots at the moving adversaries. The non-lethal projectiles hit the attackers' chests, causing a heavy impact and stopping their advance right away. Dominating the battlefield, the hero takes down one of the thugs and steps on his chest while continuing to shoot. With flawless tactical moves, he disarms the second opponent and places the gun barrel very close to neutralize the threat. One thug tries to catch the sergeant off guard from behind, raising an axe and screaming deadly insults. With absurd reflexes, the MC spins his body, dodging the cowardly attack at the very last second. He grabs the attacker's face with his bare hand and slams him into the ground with crushing force. Without losing his rhythm, the military man fires a point-blank shot, disabling the closest enemy's armor. Showing total control of the situation, the hero ejects the empty magazine from the pistol amid the chaos. He inserts the new ammo automatically and swiftly. Pulling the slide with precision, the weapon is once again ready for lethal combat. Lying on the ground, the vice-captain watches his group's downfall and stutters, asking the monster to wait. The battlefield falls silent as the sergeant remains standing, surrounded by the bodies of the defeated enemies. Just then, a blonde mercenary tries to sneak up from behind holding a dagger. Noticing the suspicious movement, the military leader turns quickly, locking onto the target in his sights. The blonde thug freezes instantly upon coming face to face with the gun barrel aimed at his forehead. The sergeant's eyes glow with an intimidating energy, showing he wouldn't hesitate to pull the trigger. Seeing that the battle is lost, the vice-captain desperately gets up and runs away, yelling that this being is a real monster. The blonde mercenary panics when he sees his cowardly superior running far away and begs him to come back. The cowardly leader tries to cover up his escape by ordering the rest of his men to keep attacking the enemy. However, the villain breaks abruptly upon finding his other subordinates knocked out on the ground and his 2 executioners waiting. The small green lackey lands a heavy blow with the butt of his gun right on the fleeing mercenary's face. The masked companion draws his tactical knife with an extremely threatening posture. Exuding a scary aura, the little creature gets ready to punish the guild leader for trying to escape. The vice-captain's expression twists into complete despair as he realizes he has nowhere left to run. Appearing like a ghost, the sergeant presses the pistol barrel against the back of the villain's neck. With a deep and authoritative voice in the demonic language, the MC orders the man to kneel immediately. The weight of the command makes the mercenary yield, and his boots hit the puddle of water in the square. Completely humiliated, the guild leader falls to his knees, surrendered to the hero's power. The dust of the combat settles, showing the military man in total control of the situation under the shocked gazes of the village. The old village chief and the locals watch the scene bewildered by the strength of that strange savior. The elven prisoner stares at the blue-skinned guy's back, processing how he managed to handle everything alone so efficiently. Maintaining tactical order, the sergeant instructs his green lackeys to chase down anyone who might have escaped. With the area secured, the leader turns his face and calls the warrior by name to begin the next phase of the plan. Very calmly, the MC asks the girl to start translating, and she agrees, still somewhat dazed. Facing the frightened crowd, the sergeant asks out loud if the humans there are afraid of his group. Using the elf's voice, he asks if the terror is only because he is an orc and the lackeys are goblins. The peasants murmur among themselves, hugging their families tightly, quite fearful of that intimidating presence. Surprising everyone, the military man openly confesses that his team is also very afraid of humans. This mutual dread happens exactly because the two sides can't communicate and understand each other properly. The spy continues the translation, listening attentively to the speech about how a lack of understanding soon turns into blind hatred and discrimination. The leader reflects bitterly that this endless cycle of irrational prejudices is exactly what drives the battles in his world. A heavy memory of explosions and destruction flashes through the guy's mind, confirming that his homeland is up in flames. With a questioning look, the military man asks the locals if they really want this peaceful place to end up the same way. Taking a step forward, he calms things down by advising that the people don't need to give a definitive answer to that right now. Changing the tone of the conversation, the sergeant reveals that he would like to make a very simple, mutually beneficial proposal to the village. The hero reaches out his hand to the old village chief, promising to guarantee everyone's protection against the corrupt mercenaries. In return, he asks that the village provide shelter and supplies so his squad can operate safely. Clenching his fist with conviction, the MC seals the deal, swearing to protect every life in that place regardless of race or age, as long as they cooperate with his survival. The old village chief and the locals stare at the sergeant with quite a bit of apprehension after hearing the deal proposal. One of the peasants questions out loud how they could trust the word of an unknown monster. Right after, another local panics, claiming that those creatures are evil and surely hiding ulterior motives. Keeping his cool, the MC explains that the group's goal is very simple, seeking only peaceful coexistence, food, and shelter in the village. To demonstrate good faith, he holsters his weapon, guaranteeing he won't harm anyone even if the village rejects the offer. Glancing out of the corner of his eye at the elf translating the conversation, the leader reinforces that this is a sincere promise. But the mood in the place shifts quickly when he grips his tactical weapon tightly again. Pointing at the fallen mercenaries on the ground, he warns that if anyone tries to double-cross or threaten his team, things will get very ugly. With a dark look, the military man assures them that traitors will join those defeated criminals right there on the spot. The show of power deeply intimidates the locals, who shrink back in fear right away. Mustering courage, the village leader steps forward, apologizing for the interruption, and calls the hero a shaman. The elderly man reveals a huge problem, recounting that some locals are being held hostage in a bandit hideout. Among these victims is a dwarven blacksmith who was recently captured and tied up by the criminals. The peasant explains that this dwarf is a true benefactor who developed the weaving and engineering for the entire settlement. Gripping his own cane very nervously, he laments that the village will be destroyed if the bandits find out about the alliance with the monsters. The village leader concludes that they can't accept the partnership, while the locals' lives are at risk in the hands of the criminals. Showing no concern, the sergeant announces that he will rescue all the prisoners personally. The elven warrior widens her eyes, totally surprised by the altruistic attitude of the one she considered a demon. The peasants are also left completely speechless, unable to believe the heroic proposal they just heard. The MC goes further and promises to eliminate the bandit threat once and for all, asking if that changes the village's answer. Still somewhat incredulous, one of the young men stutters, asking how he would pull off this rescue without even knowing the hideout's location. The military leader reveals that his small lackeys are already tracking the fleeing mercenary, who was let go on purpose during the clash. He guarantees the humans that those arrogant criminals will cease to be a concern very soon. With an unforgiving posture, the guy decrees that the squad repays kindness with kindness and evil with evil. Hearing this firm speech, Celia reflects on the fact that he is willing to clear the area precisely because of the reputation of evil beings they carry. The hero ends the conversation swearing that the true evils of that world will vanish permanently. Far from the village, the scene cuts to the mercenaries' isolated fortress, where one of the guards yawns sleepily during his watch. The night watchman complains of fatigue and asks a fellow postman if the next shift change has already been set. The enemy base proves to be very well structured, having alert archers in the towers and armed guards patrolling the main gate. Hidden in the nearby forest, the spy activates her racial magic, intensely focusing her vision to analyze the place's defenses from a distance. The young woman passes the info with great precision, noting that the fort only has one archer in the tower and 2 guards blocking the entrance. She details that the enemies wear simple leather armor and carry common spears, which indicates they are low-ranking soldiers. Impressed by the report, one of the green lackeys praises the long-eared girl's incredibly sharp vision. The sergeant also acknowledges the girl's strategic value and sincerely apologizes for having underestimated her skills earlier. Inflating her own ego, the elf smiles smugly and claims that her race dominates archery because they can see details even beyond the mountains. However, when the leader asks her to evaluate the interior of the fortress, the young woman freaks out, thinking he is demanding too much magic. The military man explains practically that discovering the internal layout would be the key to ensuring a fast, zero-casualty invasion. At that moment, a colorful little lizard stuck to a nearby rock is suddenly grabbed. Wasting no time, the masked little monster tries to devour the bugger whole in a fit of pure hunger. Noticing the lack of discipline, the MC scolds the lackey, demanding that everyone maintain absolute focus on the mission. With a corrective smack from the boss, the little warrior spits the lizard onto the ground safe and sound. The helper grumbles while massaging his head as the leader gives the order to prep the combat. Quite curious, one of the goblins points at the little blue animal, wanting to know what kind of weird creature that is. The hungry lackey replies that it's just delicious meat, and even tries to offer a little piece for the master to taste. Holding the small reptile in his hands, the sergeant analyzes the situation and comes up with a much better idea to solve the infiltration problem. The smart system kicks in, confirming the taming of the lizard, which evolves instantly due to the MC's special title. Leveraging the servant's new capabilities, the hero throws the little critter forcefully toward the wooden walls. The small creature sticks perfectly to the structure and begins crawling up without making a single suspicious noise. The human guard continues his patrol peacefully along the fort's balcony, completely ignoring the tiny invasion happening right below. Once inside, the little reptile uses its mutant biology, turning its own body into a giant magical observing eye. The modified animal moves swiftly through the damp stone corridors, exploring the fortress's underground area. Masterfully hidden in the shadows, the spy carefully tracks the local jailer's patrol route. The little animal's focus finds a sinister room filled with chains and interrogation tools scattered around the place. Far away, the sergeant closes his eyes and perfectly syncs his mind with the living camera sent into the fort. The military leader reports to the team that the visual connection was an absolute success, leaving the elven warrior perplexed by the strategy. Overcome with curiosity, the girl takes a step forward, asking permission to see through the spell as well. But the spy freezes on the spot, interrupting her own approach before even getting close to the guy. Bathed in moonlight, the young woman's expression reveals an intense battle against her own prejudice. She mentally scolds herself, finding it a massive absurdity to be trying to mingle with that group of monsters. Totally frustrated by her own weakness, the girl laments the cruel irony of having become useless just because she can no longer pull a bowstring. She clenches her hands, feeling disgusted with herself, wondering if she will accept being an eternal disgrace to the nobility of the elves. Trying to push those bad thoughts away, the young woman takes a deep breath when she hears the lackey yell excitedly about the hostage's location. Very naturally, the sergeant reaches out and presses the gelatinous radio against the paralyzed girl's face. He hands over the tactical communication gear, stating that her help will be essential from that moment on. The prisoner holds the small slime to her ear, feeling her heart race with the unexpected trust she just received. The military leader assumes full command, announcing that the prison's internal map will be shared with the entire squad. Through the shared vision, the team spots the peasants and the dwarf shrinking in fear inside a rusty cell. The MC explains that a direct invasion with monsters would cause too much panic among the frightened victims. Using Celia's name for the first time, he decrees that her pacifying presence is the only way to avoid a disaster during the rescue. The warrior is left completely shaken and speechless upon hearing from that man that the group really needs her. Inside the enemy walls, a mercenary hears footsteps approaching the gate and draws his weapon on high alert. The watchman steps forward yelling for the invader to identify themselves, while the young woman emerges from the mist walking elegantly. Immediately, the pair of guards cross their iron spears, blocking the suspicious visitor's access. However, the men lower their guard, confused as they realize it's just a beautiful and seemingly harmless elf wandering through the night. Taking advantage of this absolutely perfect distraction, the green lackeys invade the watchtower and take out the sentinel archer before he can react. The human guard complains to his fellow postman, asking what he is doing just standing there like that. Giving no time for any reply, the green lackey appears from behind and neutralizes the threat silently. Outside, the sergeant commands the invasion, ordering the squad to advance straight through the main entrance. He coordinates the operation via radio, indicating there's a target in the left room, who's soon taken down by the little warrior. The team moves in sync, and the leader warns about 2 more opponents in the right corridor who are quickly neutralized. With the area clear, the masked helper takes the front line, wielding his weapon with total concentration. Explaining the tactical formation, the hero states that the second goblin will provide cover while they breach the defenses. He places Celia in the middle of the group for safety, advising that he will personally guard the rear. The entire squad descends the stone stairs swiftly and extremely precisely. Observing the hostages in the cell, the military man advises the use of contact attacks to delay any alarm until the rescue. Just then, one of the jailers notices a strange movement and looks back in confusion. Confidently displaying the keys to the place, the elven warrior assures the prisoners that they can stay calm. The peasants cry tears of relief, deducing that the young woman was sent by the village chief to save them. The spy asks for immediate silence and tells everyone to get ready for a fast escape. The MC instructs his lackeys to continue sweeping the fort, promising to catch up with them shortly. As a final instruction, the sergeant authorizes the use of firearms in case of any emergency along the way. Opening the rusty cell, the elf hurries the locals, revealing that mutant mounts will guide them outside. One of the prisoners grumbles, very annoyed at being called an old human by the girl. The dwarf uses a mocking tone, commenting on the unusual sight of a long-eared spy without her sacred adornment. But his attention is soon diverted to the imposing figure standing at the end of the dark hall. The prisoner goes into shock upon confirming that it is a blue-skinned warrior. Dread takes over the peasants, who step back terrified, screaming about the presence of a monster. Chaos breaks out in the prison as the hostages yell that they are suffering another invasion in the place. Trying to control the mess, Celia guarantees that the military man isn't dangerous and that he is there to help. The MC just watches the screaming, keeping his cold and quiet posture. Not knowing how to explain the situation, the young woman tries to convince the group that he is a very friendly being. Hearing this lame excuse, the dwarf bursts into a loud, scandalous laugh. He mocks the claim, finding it completely impossible for kindness to exist in a creature like that. Flexing his muscles, the hostage states that the race of light is untrustworthy and that he wants to end all of them. Driven by pride, the man swears he'd rather rot in that place than be saved by such a bizarre group. Ignoring the tantrum, the leader evaluates the man's condition and deduces he went through a rough time at the hands of the bandits. The hostage furiously refutes the observation, swearing that his face has always looked like that and demanding more respect. Puffing up his chest, he introduces himself as the proud Balak, and the sergeant asks if he is the famous blacksmith. Balak shows confusion at the opponent's fluency, but soon locks his eyes on the gear he carries. The artisan examines the weapon, impressed by the flawless cut and reinforced steel of that complex piece. Grabbing the military man euphorically, the dwarf begs to find out how that works, only to be pushed away right after. The conversation is interrupted by a scream of panic echoing through the fort's corridors. The sound of gunshots and confusion makes the hero call his subordinates on the radio, demanding an immediate report. The lackey desperately reports that they ended up bumping into the true leader of the criminals. Levitating over a pile of coins, a female mage displays her intimidating mystical aura. The little warrior confirms the woman's appearance, warning that she is a user of dangerous magic. The sergeant is totally left, not understanding how something that unreal is possible in the middle of an operation. Masterfully twirling her staff, the villain gathers powerful energy around herself. She fires a fast blast at the invaders, screaming the name of her special technique. The masked helper runs for his life, trying to escape the glowing spheres that destroy the surroundings. The little green monsters jump frantically, dodging the energy impacts on the stone walls. The radio emits a sharp noise, and the leader yells worriedly, demanding an answer from his team. Realizing the severity of the problem, he orders the elf to get all the hostages out of there as fast as possible. The hero turns his back and sprints down the corridor, while the girl asks him not to go alone. Balak grabs the blue guy's attention with a very loud. With a strong throw, the blacksmith tosses a shiny object toward the military man. The MC catches the item in midair nimbly, without losing the pace of his strategic run. The golden piece gleams in his hands, being described by its creator as the absolute essence of engineering. The dwarf brags by making up a ridiculous name for the master key, causing the spy to judge the invention with disgust. He guarantees that the soldier will know exactly where to use the artifact once he reaches his destination. Running at top speed, the sergeant mentally begs his allies to hold on tight until his arrival. The hero already cocks and fires his weapon, clearing a path through the fortress's internal defenses. In the main hall, the two small warriors retreat tactically while shooting at the flying threat. The mage adopts a sadistic tone, asking where the little creatures think they are running to. Hovering in the air, the villain demands that the invaders entertain her much more before being completely defeated. Gathering even more power, the woman launches a second storm of destructive spells. The overwhelming impact hits the lackeys head-on, violently throwing the two of them far away. Suddenly, the bandit leader notices a suspicious flash and looks back, quite startled. Acting on reflex, she conjures a magical barrier that perfectly blocks the rapid shots. Keeping his aim locked, the sergeant coldly asks if the woman is the true boss of that place. Overcome with hatred, the mage insults the guy, repeating his race with deep contempt. She swears to put an end to that insolent enemy and summons her pet beast to the battlefield. A colossal shadow swallows the military man, while the fallen little warrior warns about the danger right behind him. The hero shockingly notices the overwhelming presence, taking control of the environment. Raising its heavy claws, a monstrous monster appears ready to crush the invader for good. The wild beast lets out a deafening roar, showing all its animalistic fury. With an acrobatic leap, the MC narrowly escapes the blow that shatters the entire floor. Sliding across the ground, he recovers his balance and unloads his weapon right at the creature. However, the projectiles bounce off the beast's armored plumage without causing any practical effect. Seeing his tactic fail miserably, the sergeant curses the situation, realizing his weapon will be useless there. Facing the colossal beast, the sergeant desperately realizes that his attacks are having zero effect. Reloading his gun quickly, he assesses the situation with intense tension. Focused on protecting his allies, the hero decides to hold the creature off as long as possible to give them time to escape. Just then, a precise strike hits the giant monster's eyes. The beast lets out a deafening roar of pain, feeling the surprise impact. Unable to see clearly, the animal starts thrashing violently around the room. Taking advantage of the quick distraction, the leader tells his helpers to flee and swears to hold the beast back. Out of his reach, the mage shows off her arrogance from the top of a stone pillar. The villain mocks the group's resistance, claiming that mercenaries need trouble to keep their business profitable. Considering those creatures as mere tools, she questions the audacity of causing a mess in her hideout. Showing no mercy, the woman conjures several wind arrows, threatening to cut off the opponent's limbs. The military man widens his eyes, surprised by the speed of the magical attack coming his way. With a heavy impact, he is hit and thrown backward, unable to dodge. Amidst the chaos, the monster ignores the warning and captures one of the little warriors with extreme ease. Thrown to the floor, the MC watches the scene, completely injured and outraged by his own weakness. From the top of her pillar, the mage watches the beast crush the sergeant against the stone floor. Pinned under the monster's weight, the military man grunts, trying to comprehend the animal's absurd strength. Annoyed by the noise, the villain waves her wand, demanding immediate silence from those filthy creatures. Suddenly, an iron cage drops from the ceiling, swinging dangerously. Still pinned down, the hero stares at the suspended structure, totally confused by the novelty. Focusing his gaze, he notices something very familiar swinging up there. A small green hand waves from inside the bars, crying out for help. The sturdy padlock locks the only way out, keeping the lackey relentlessly trapped. Instantly grasping the situation, the blue guy is very surprised. Acting on instinct, he quickly reaches his hand to one of his tactical pockets. The sergeant pulls out the shiny golden key, remembering that that item is the dwarven blacksmith's masterpiece. Staring at the magical tool, he recalls the promise that he would know exactly when to use it. However, the distance to the hanging cage creates a complicated challenge for an immediate rescue. Right nearby, the second green helper tries to act, holding the blue slime tightly. The small gelatinous companion lets out an excited noise, ready for combat. Stuck to its owner's vest, the blue slime crawls quickly, grabbing the soldier's attention. A memory of the dwarven blacksmith smiling crosses the MC's mind, giving him the perfect idea. With all his might, the hero throws the little monster through the air straight toward the cage. The little critter flies across the room like a projectile right in front of the bandit leader. Totally confused by the bizarre throw, the woman goes on maximum alert. Suspicious of the enemy's intentions, she fires her wind magics furiously. The slime stretches in midair, managing to perfectly dodge the fast attacks. Very agilely, the gelatinous companion reaches the lock holding the golden key. The little monster inserts the artifact into the padlock without missing a single second. With a quick click, the iron lock yields, opening the path to freedom. The structure breaks open, dropping the small lackey along with several harmless little creatures. The flock of harmless critters falls rapidly, landing right on top of the stone pillar. Taken completely by surprise by the rain of exotic creatures, the mage is left understanding nothing. One of the little monsters lands face first right onto the frightened villain's face. Knocked off balance by the unexpected impact, the woman falls screaming from the top of her base. The bandit leader hits the wooden crates on the floor with a painful and dusty thud. Thrashing about in terror, she screams at the top of her lungs for those dirty bugs to get away. In a quick move, the mage grabs her magic wand, regaining her posture. She conjures a blast of energy, pushing all the annoying little creatures far away. Behind the mess, the huge winged beast lets out another roar of pure fury. Panting, the villain gets up, crushing one of the cute little monsters in her hands with extreme hatred. Maintaining her authoritative pose, the woman orders the colossal beast to stop playing around. She complains about losing control of her own servants while squeezing the hostage. Demanding immediate obedience, the mage tells the creature to crush the sergeant into the ground without pity. The giant monster raises its massive foot, threatening to put a definitive end to the fallen hero. In an incredible survival reflex, the military man rolls to the side, dodging the destructive blow by a hair. Summoning the wind spirits, the mercenary leader starts preparing an advanced spell. The magic wraps around her legs, boosting her speed to finish off the enemies once and for all. Suddenly, Celia appears in the hall, exuding an absolutely stunning emerald ore. Completely paralyzed by the powerful presence, the villain asks who that intruder is. Walking with firm and silent steps, the elf shows total mastery over the environment. The young woman sports a relentless look, calling her adversary a foolish creature. Feeling the crushing pressure, the mage fires off her magical attacks in desperation. The spy jumps with an absurd lightness, dodging the arrows effortlessly and stating she knows the local winds. In a perfect mid-air spin, she deflects the offensive, proving her immense superiority in combat. Keeping an expression of pure confidence, Celia declares that the breeze of that place already belongs to her. Using the current to her advantage, the girl reaches an impressive height above the enemy. Focusing all the power in her body, the heroine dives like a true fast lightning bolt. The warrior lands a colossal downward kick, giving no chance for defense. The devastating impact hits the villains squarely, obliterating the floor around them. Terrified by the extreme strength it just witnessed, the winged monster runs away and abandons the fight. Dust rises through the fortress hall, hiding the real damage from that brutal blow. Stepping out of the smokescreen, the elf lands softly back on the ground with elegance. Holding the blue slime securely, the small lackey watches the savior. With the threat defeated, the green helpers raise their arms, celebrating the great victory. The sergeant reaches his hand out to the elven warrior, asking her not to misunderstand that peaceful gesture. The young woman returns the gesture, making it very clear she only showed up there because she couldn't stand the idea of being in debt to a supposed monster. They finally shake hands, sealing a silent agreement of cooperation after all that mess. The military leader calmly agrees with her reasoning, stating that her debt was definitely paid with that rescue. Far away in the stone corridor, the dwarven blacksmith walks with firm steps, holding a wooden club with great determination. Without hesitating, he steps over the bodies of the defeated mercenaries scattered across the fortress floor. The freed hostage stands right in front of one of the fallen thugs and raises his improvised weapon. In a quick move, he grabs the unconscious bandit's neck, showing he has no intention of forgiving what he went through. Staring the criminal down up close, the dwarf shows an unforgiving look of someone ready to get payback for all the days in captivity. But instead of attacking, he simply lets out a loud, continuous whistle that echoes throughout the underground environment. Back in the main hall, the tense atmosphere gives way to a moment of care for the creatures that were once threats. One of the small furry monsters eagerly drinks a mysterious purple liquid straight from a bowl offered by the group. The MC patiently feeds the critters, making sure they recover well after the exhausting battle. The system confirms that the adult beast and its cubs were successfully treated using a special potion blessed by the elven warrior herself. The gigantic creature lets out a deafening chirp, making the sergeant cover his ears while the AI announces the official taming of that family of beasts. The whole group gathers around their new furry allies, totally surprised by how quickly those beasts calmed. Right then, the dwarven blacksmith appears through the hall doors, showing a posture of someone who has already settled all his unfinished business there. The freed prisoner shows renewed confidence, ready to lead his people's return home. Meanwhile, in the village, the old chief paces desperately, wanting to understand what the heck happened outside the gates during the night. He comes face to face with the squad returning safely, bringing back all the hostages and the imposing new mounts. The hero leads the walk, confessing that the results of that night invasion heavily exceeded his expectations. The village families run emotionally to hug their loved ones who were just rescued from the criminals' hands. Tears of pure relief take over the settlement as they offer endless thanks for the miracle of being reunited once again. The old leader approaches the blue military man to discuss the fate of the defeated invaders brought in as prisoners. Pointing to the group of tied-up bandits on the ground, he warns that the village has total freedom to decide the fate of that scum. Adopting his negotiator stance, the MC turns his face to ask for the official answer about the deal he had proposed earlier. Calmly, he directly asks if the human community is finally willing to cooperate peacefully with his squad. Overcome with gratitude, the elderly man can barely hold back his tears as he prepares his definitive response for the savior. The confirmation comes in the form of a grand celebratory toast inside the tavern, declaring that the group is extremely welcome in the village. The locals raise their mugs in a general shout of joy, guaranteeing that the welcome will be the best possible for the unlikely heroes. In the middle of the party, the owlbear cubs and the slimes attack a huge piece of meat after being given permission to make themselves at home. The small green lackeys also don't waste time and devour the food served with a completely wild appetite. Watching the scene, the elf judges their eating habits with quite a bit of disgust, criticizing the rustic manners of those creatures. Noticing the looks, one of the goblins chews excitedly and hands a piece of meat to the girl in a very friendly manner. The warrior swallows hard, totally uncomfortable with the drooly offer from the little military helper. So as not to be rude to the human hosts, she decides to try to mingle and takes the purple gelatinous monster in her hands. The slime lets out a peculiar little noise, while the young woman mentally prepares to ingest the offered magical drink. Sitting at a more isolated table, the military leader watches his team integrate with a quiet and evaluative look. His expression carries the weight of battle fatigue, mixed with the huge responsibility of keeping all those beings alive. Little by little, the barrier of prejudice falls, and the spy finally begins to share the meal with the little monsters without being so picky. This whole scene of camaraderie sparks a flash in the guy's memory, reminding him of the rare moments of peace with his old human squad. The contrast between the traumatic past and that moment of calm makes him reflect on the absurd path his life has taken. Suddenly cutting through the nostalgia, a heavy mug of booze slams hard onto the wooden table right in front of him. The dwarf sits across from the soldier, commenting that, for a monster, he has an incredible talent for pretending to be a hero. Keeping an air of suspicion, the blacksmith swears he won't be fooled by that act, because to him, the demonic race never changes its true nature. The freed hostage argues that the military man defeated the enemies without blinking, asking what the real difference is between him and the criminals. The sergeant takes a sip of his drink, ignoring the accusation, and merely mocks him by asking if his pronunciation of the local language is really that bad. Right after, the blue guy calls the dwarf by his full name very directly, catching the man by surprise. With a firm tone, the MC decides to explain exactly what the big difference is between his squad and the band of mercenaries. He coldly states that his team is simply stronger and more lethal, which is why they are alive having a chat while the enemies aren't. Banging his fist on the table, the hero decrees that their only goal is to survive, and nothing matters beyond that brutal fact. Finishing his speech, the soldier places the golden magic key back onto the wood, saying thanks for the useful loan during the invasion. The blacksmith flashes a crooked smile, admitting that he doesn't act or speak like a common monster, and asks what his real name is. From the other side of the room, the elf's long ear twitches quickly as it catches that important question in the air. The warrior stops eating instantly, fully paying attention to finally find out the identity of her supposed captor. Hiding nothing, the guy starts to say his military rank but corrects himself midway, revealing he is just Legion. The spy repeats his name in a very low whisper, storing that info in her mind with a very embarrassed expression. The artisan gets totally confused by the weird sound, thinking that the naming conventions of that race should be way more monstrous and aggressive. Losing his patience with the persistent label, the hero states he doesn't belong to that green race, making the man call him crazy. Resting his face on his hand, the sergeant openly confesses that he was a human from another world before ending up in that bizarre place. The night continues peacefully outside the tavern, while the absurd revelations happen downstairs. The dwarf spits out his entire drink immediately, breaking into an extremely scandalous laugh upon hearing the confession. Pounding the table, he judges that whole story about the green dragon and interdimensional wars to be the biggest joke he's ever heard. The man keeps laughing and calling the soldier a storyteller, finding it wonderful to have met such a creative and fun monster. Getting close to the guy's face, the blacksmith mockingly asks if the next step in his grand plan is to take over that entire world. Raising his mug excitedly, the dwarf proposes a fun toast to celebrate the harmless madness of his new drinking buddy. As his only answer to the mockery, the military leader simply pulls the mystic green egg from his backpack and places it in the middle of the table. The visual impact of the artifact makes the artisan choke again, widening his eyes in shock as he recognizes the energy of that ancient item. While the man coughs trying to catch his breath, the hero explains that he needs to hatch it to demand the entity send him back home. Suddenly, the sound of a chair crashing hard to the floor interrupts their conversation very aggressively. The elven warrior marches with firm, heavy steps toward their table, showing an expression of absolute fury. Without saying a single word, the young woman jumps and delivers a downward kick charged with magic, with the clear intention of destroying the mystic egg. The devastating impact splits the wooden table in half, sending splinters flying everywhere while the sacred artifact is launched far away. The partying peasants instantly stop celebrating, watching the sudden destruction without understanding why the girl had flipped out. The old village chief freezes in place holding his mug, watching in complete silence as chaos brews once again inside his peaceful settlement. Taken by fury, the warrior charges with everything, landing a strike charged with magic. The sergeant shouts the elf's name, demanding she stop that immediately. With quick reflexes, the military man raises his arm, blocking the heavy impact of the attack. The young woman widens her eyes, completely shocked to see her charge being stopped. Wasting no time, the blue guy grabs her shirt collar with a very firm grip. The spy yells, accusing the hero of being one of the green dragon's servants. Boiling with hatred, she demands an answer, calling the leader a darn monster. Just then, one of the small green lackeys draws his weapon, aiming it straight at the girl. The long-eared girl notices the helper's threat and freezes on the spot, sensing the danger. Trying to avoid a tragedy, the MC orders his subordinates to fall back. The dwarven blacksmith steps into the middle of the mess, telling both of them to shut their mouths. He glares at the military man, warning that he has no idea what world that guy came from. However, the man makes it clear that matters regarding the green dragon shouldn't be discussed there. The artisan argues that making a scene in the middle of the village won't help anyone. Seeking more privacy, the group decides to move to a much more isolated and secure place. Once in the new hideout, the blacksmith taps a tool against the eggshell to test its resistance. The dwarf confirms that the material is practically an immortal and indestructible substance. Tied up once again, the warrior warns the sergeant to keep the control spell very tight. The young woman swears that if the magic fails for 1 second, she will destroy that egg in his head. The hero ignores the threats and asks if the girl belongs to the maternal bloodline of Tuskar. The artisan mentions the famous story of the elf who lost her mother and injured her arm. He details that the tragedy stopped her from using the bow against the feared master of the forest. The spy lowers her head, remembering the years she spent looking for traces of her enemy. Holding the artifact, the man reveals that almost all ancient races know this legend. Processing the info, the military man finally understands the reason her arm is injured. Overcome with the pain of the past, the long-eared girl tells everyone to shut up, hitting the wall. The memory of the terrible battle in the mountains haunts the prisoner's mind. With tears of rage, she screams that an elf's grudge lasts over 1,000 years. The girl promises that she will get her revenge against the beast and all his servants. But the dwarf points to the soldier, stating that she is coming after the wrong person. Blinded by revenge, the young woman claims she doesn't care who he really is on the inside. The MC rubs his chin, evaluating the situation, and concludes that this solves everything perfectly. The elf and the blacksmith are totally left, not understanding the guy's reasoning. Holding the mystic shell, the hero explains that he just needs to figure out how to get back home. He proposes handing the enemy over to the warrior as soon as he gets the answers he wants. The duo goes into shock, questioning if an absurd bargain like that is really possible. The artisan asks if the sergeant is really going to give up the master of the forest that easily. Having possession of the egg, the spy admits she can't break that indestructible shell right now. The military leader guarantees she can keep the item as long as she gives him time to interrogate it later. Keeping focus on his main goal, he warns that this is his single non-negotiable condition. The girl gets a doubtful expression while the dwarf tries to hold back his laughter. The blacksmith bursts into a loud laugh, finding it bizarre that an orc would give that artifact to an elf. The little lackeys go into absolute panic, thinking all of that is a huge nightmare. One of the helpers demands the egg back while the young woman agrees to help hatch it. Hugging the item affectionately, the goblins promise to warm it up so they can punish the long-eared girl in the future. Cutting through the mood, the dwarf warns that a hug from the lackeys won't be enough for it to hatch. He explains that the process requires a massive explosion of pure magic made by advanced engineering. Taking advantage of the opening, the blacksmith decides to impose his own condition on the hero. The man brings up the tactical pistol and shows a lot of interest in how it works. With ambition in his eyes, he demands all the weaponry knowledge from the soldier's world. The artisan goes further and asks for the technological blueprints to manufacture those metallic parts. The MC repeats the proposal calmly, trying to understand the scope of the deal. Smiling confidently, the dwarf guarantees that the egg will never hatch without a continuous injection of magic. He warns that without the proper help, the artifact will sleep for 1,000 years without perishing or hatching. As a solution, the hostage suggests creating a special incubator using his engineering. The elven warrior questions if the man really has the capability to build a machine like that. The blacksmith proudly states that it would be very easy if they had access to his people's ark. Curious about the term, the sergeant asks what exactly this mentioned place is. The artisan adopts a serious tone, explaining that this was the final kingdom built by his race. A huge mechanical fortress shaped like a crab pops into everyone's mind as the ultimate triumph. The colossal machine takes a heavy step, crushing trees wherever it goes. The base was built on the back of an ancestral mimic monster that wanders the region. The blacksmith brags, saying it is a mobile arsenal and the great legacy of his civilization. Excited, he claims that inside they can mass-produce the magical incubator like baking bread. The artisan reaches out his hand, making his request official to the mysterious dragon breeder. The sergeant takes the golden key out of his pocket that his companion had tossed earlier. The man promises to use the tool to open the vault and hatch the master of the forest. Keeping his cold expression, the blue guy evaluates the risks of this information exchange. Obsessed with technology, the dwarf demands the weapon manufacturing blueprint in exchange for the service. The night moves on silently, covering the roof of the group's makeshift hideout. Inside the room, the small lackeys and the slimes sleep piled up peacefully. The military leader stays awake, standing guard alone in the middle of the darkness. Focused on his tactical maintenance, he inserts the bullets into the pistol's magazine with precision. The soldier loads the piece into the weapon and pulls the slide, leaving the gear ready for use. Holding one last projectile, the hero reflects that that world is still stuck in the weapon-making dark ages. The MC's mind travels through harsh realities, reflecting that a child could never beat an adult in a direct fight. In that same unforgiving way, the elderly and women don't stand a chance of overpowering people in prime physical shape. With that in mind, he notes that the vast majority of humans are incapable of defeating brutal beasts with crushing strength. Being a sad truth, the sergeant understands that brute force is what sets the rules and keeps the structure of that place functioning. Standing in the dark looking at his own weapon, he questions if he really should hand over such dangerous technology to the people there, fearing that it would throw the current order into pure chaos. The blue guy worries about the possibility of this advanced weaponry ending up harming the entire local ecosystem. The peaceful human village rests under the moonlight while he wonders if this action might not obliterate their own civilization. Looking at the small gelatinous lackey sleeping soundly, the leader feels the crushing weight of this decision. Suddenly, an aggressive voice echoes in his mind, telling him to stop overthinking and just follow the orders he was given. The memory teleports him straight to the hell of modern warfare, where an officer demanded that everyone abandon their moral standards and just pull the trigger, leaving the final judgment to future generations. In the middle of the conflict, a desperate recruit tries to argue that the target is a place that preserves a precious and vibrant cultural heritage. Over the deafening sound of explosions, the soldier insists that the area houses all the history and the foundation of their civilization. Ignoring the plea, the platoon commander pushes forward relentlessly, asking if the subordinate thinks he wants to cause that destruction of his own free will. Totally shaken by the superior's coldness, the recruit cries, remembering that the officer used to be a college professor just like him, and doesn't understand how the man can act like nothing matters. The commander stares at his colleague with cutting coldness, asking where the recruit still saw a professor in that horrible scenario. The officer reinforces that all old identities have disappeared, making it very clear that now there are only allies and enemies on the front line. Pressuring the scared colleague, he decrees that ranks, ages, and genders don't mean a thing anymore, because the entire social order has simply collapsed. Grabbing the man by his vest, the commander explodes in rage, warning that the country that was theirs yesterday already belongs to someone else, and that a rookie's life expectancy is no more than 20 minutes in that hell. The veteran continues his angry rant, pointing out that most of the young people are already gone, forcing the army to drag older folks like them onto the battlefield. Without dropping his aggressive tone, he asks the professor how many more platoon members will need to be sacrificed in the middle of that tragedy just to protect a pile of heritage. The military leader concludes by swearing that the most important thing isn't the piles of cement and wood, but the future called survival, and right after that, authorizes the operation over the radio. Leaning on a low wall looking over the city, he initiates the fatal communication, dictating the target code for the artillery. Immediately, the urban landscape is swallowed by overwhelming flashes, announcing the end of everything they knew. The recruit watches the bombing completely horrified while he whispers the operation code, feeling the weight of that loss. Turning his face away so as not to see the result, the commander repeats the final numbers with an expression loaded with pain and guilt. Back in the present, the blue sergeant grabs his own head in the dark room, being haunted by the numbers of that tragedy that won't leave his mind. The waking nightmare is interrupted by a worried cry from his small green lackey calling for the master. The two helpers appear holding a bowl of food, asking if the hero is okay and if he ended up dozing off again in the middle of his shift. Trying to push away the dark memories, the guy turns his face to look at the morning sky through the wooden window. Stretching eagerly, the MC concludes that it would be a shame to destroy that world, but that he has already gone too far to worry about the local civilization. Holding his pistol against the sunlight, the soldier decrees that the order of that new world is nothing but mere obstacles that he needs to overcome. Looking at his peculiar team made up of the little monsters and the elf, he reaffirms that his absolute priority remains solely survival. Keeping his unshakable determination, the guy understands that his personal war isn't over yet, and that he needs to find a way back alive to his original platoon. With his eyes fixed on the dwarven blacksmith in front of him, the leader promises himself that he will do whatever is necessary to achieve that goal without hesitation. In a firm motion, he places his firearm on the wooden table, ready to put all his cards on the table. The MC states seriously that he will hand over all the technological knowledge of that equipment without any problem. Surprise overtakes the artisan upon hearing that the proposal goes way beyond the simple engineering contained in that pistol. Tapping his fingers on the weapon's metal, the blue guy promises to present all the battle schematics reciting in his tactical mind. The dwarf is amazed at the idea of being able to explore the machinery of all the battlefields of that unknown universe. However, the military man lowers his face, adopting a calculating expression, and warns that there is a non-negotiable condition for the deal. He points directly at the wooden bowl containing the purple liquid, catching the man by surprise. Without beating around the bush, the sergeant orders the blacksmith to swallow that potion immediately. Adopting a commanding posture with his team right behind him, the hero demands that the artisan join the squad for good. Displaying an intense gaze, the leader demands that the man not only replicate the weapons from his memory, but also build a high-performance arsenal far superior to those. Sweating bullets at the ultimatum, the freed hostage hesitates, fearing that the suspicious drink might bind him to magical servitude just like it did with the long-eared warrior. The sergeant explains that the drink is just a basic security precaution, ensuring that the military knowledge won't be used against their own squad in the future. The blacksmith argues, questioning how the soldier could control the use of that devastating technology after returning to his home world. With total indifference, the MC replies that it won't be his problem anymore, and that from that moment on, all the machinery will belong to the artisan. The man analyzes the leader's coldness, confessing that he previously thought the guy was different from monsters because he harbored a human soul. However, flashing a wide smile, the blacksmith admits that, come to think of it, the military man's actions are also very far from being harmless like those of an ordinary human. Staring into the sergeant's focused red eyes, the hostage confesses he's really liking that relentless attitude. Hesitating no more, the dwarf grabs the wooden bowl, concluding that the proposal is extremely reasonable and doesn't make him lose anything. Very eager, the man tips back the purple liquid and swallows the potion made by the lackeys in one gulp. He slams the empty container hard on the table, confirming he fulfilled his end of the bargain. The artisan reaches out his hand very excitedly, making it official that he accepts diving headfirst into that military alliance. The two exchange looks of pure understanding, sharing the exact same practical ambition to survive in that place. The handshake seals the deal, while the artificial intelligence recognizes the ingestion of the recovery fluid by the extremely high-level dwarf. But soon the system displays an alert about a mental taming failure, revealing that his race has an internal resistance device against mind control. The tool tries to apply physical dominance as an alternative, but an error message confirms that the mechanical body completely rejected the magic. Totally immune to the submission spell, the blacksmith's cybernetic eyes glow in a bright shade of blue, showing his complex internal engineering. Using a small rustic tool, the blacksmith analyzes one of the weapon's projectiles with an absolute level of concentration. Sitting at the table with the squad, he correctly deduces that the casing enveloping the ammo is forged entirely out of brass. The artisan rolls the piece between his fingers, examining every millimeter of the perfectly molded metal. With his immense experience, he details that the structure was created using extreme force and heat to ensure sturdiness, as well as receiving a polish that brings durability and shine. The freed hostage's brilliant mind soon understands that the inside hides dormant gunpowder, ready to be awakened by the sensitive component at the rear base. The elven warrior observes the small bullet on the table, still finding such fascination over such a tiny object very strange. Keeping his pipe in his mouth, the dwarf notices a crucial detail and states that the lead core is wrapped in a layer of copper. The man frowns in confusion at first, questioning why the creator chose such a soft metal that will completely deform upon impact. Just then, his eyes widen in an explosive epiphany as he deciphers the overwhelming intent of that mechanics. Yelling with excitement, the blacksmith explains that the soft coating is there so it doesn't damage the weapon's barrel and at the same time was designed to crush inside the target, causing massive internal damage. Completely amazed by the design, the artisan praises the innovative and lethal engineering he found in that little piece of metal. The spy is perplexed to realize that this entire surgically precise process is meant to be just a consumable item for a single attack. The little green lackeys judge the dwarf's bizarre excitement critically, calling him a pervert for seeming so intimate with an inanimate object. Ignoring the team's criticism, the man drops the bullet on the table and pulls the whole pistol closer to himself. Showing an almost maniacal look of euphoria, the blacksmith picks up his spoon, demanding to take the main machinery apart as fast as possible to see what's inside. Holding his spoon as if it were a precision tool, the dwarf gets ready to open the weapon's machinery. But suddenly the man freezes in place, completely motionless. Outside the shack, the whole team watches the scene, finding that sudden paralysis very weird. The artisan keeps a blank stare at nothing, making the elf ask what is happening to him. Just then, a trickle of blood runs down the blacksmith's nose without him even noticing. Giving no warning, Balak falls flat on his back, leaving the team in absolute panic. The sergeant runs desperately toward the artisan, shouting his name. The spy checks the man's vital signs and warns in terror that he has no breath and no pulse. Standing before the body lying on the floor, the warrior sorrowfully decrees that the blacksmith has passed away. Setting the dramatic diagnosis aside, the hero orders them to take the dwarf's armor off immediately. Totally confused by the request, Celia hesitates while the little lackeys deduce that the master wants to loot the man's belongings because he's a true monster. However, the green helper's face changes as he tries to understand what is actually going on there. Very nimbly, the military man starts heavy CPR on the fallen companion's chest. The girl stutters in fear, wanting to know what the heck he is trying to do with the body. In a somber tone, the little monster figures that it is a cruel desecration used to mock defeated enemies. The situation gets even weirder when the soldier takes a deep breath and gives the blacksmith mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Watching this unusual scene, the elf and the goblin are completely disgusted and left speechless. Luckily, the procedure works perfectly and the artisan wakes up coughing, gasping for air. Springing back to life, the man starts yelling crazily again about the difference in materials used in the upper and lower parts of the gun. The peasants around them start to whisper in awe, believing they witnessed a very high-level resurrection match. The human crowd celebrates the salvation, glorifying the absurd powers of the supposed blue shot. The long-eared warrior is completely perplexed by the result, muttering that she felt absolutely no magical flow in that medical action. Ignoring everyone's confusion, Balak keeps babbling about the complex process of smelting and polishing the unknown metal. The impact of the technological genius is so massive that the dwarf loses his strength and falls to his knees in the dirt. Holding the pistol as if it were a sacred relic, he exalts the weapon as a miracle made of iron and a true lethal masterpiece. Seizing the allies' reality check, the sergeant asks directly if he can manufacture something similar. The blacksmith lowers his head with a defeated look, admitting that it is very frustrating to accept his technical limitations. Being completely honest, the man confesses that it would be impossible to create that right there even with decades of work, unless they were at the Dwarven Ark. Looking for an alternative, the artisan asks if there is any older model with a different operating mechanism than the one he's holding. With hope in his eyes, he begs to know if the hero knows other types of weaponry that are simpler to reproduce in the forge. The MC points to his own head, indicating that he has an entire arsenal stored in his tactical memory. With a confident smile, the soldier promises to personally show all that military technology to his ally. Motivated by the gigantic challenge, the blacksmith raises his hammer with insane energy and gets to work. The glowing hot metal receives precise strikes while the forge operates at full steam, lighting up the environment. Side by side, the two discuss the designs intensely, mixing local engineering with the military knowledge of another world. The artisan's mind is flooded with visions of ancient weapons firing on primitive battlefields. Soon the mental image evolves, showing human soldiers using repeating shotguns inside chaotic trenches. Taking in all this mechanical info, the dwarf is completely amazed by the war genius of those beings. The production doesn't stop for a single second, and the hammer comes down hard, molding the raw steel on the anvils. The sergeant keeps sharing visual memories, revealing cops holding classic revolvers in big cities. The vision fast-forwards to special tactical forces dominating high-risk areas with modern, rapid-fire submachine guns. The overload of complex schematics is so huge that the blacksmith holds his own head, almost going crazy with euphoria and magical pain. Every gear makes sense now, revealing the simple and effective operation of the casing ejector on a bolt-action rifle. The manual motion of reloading the long-range weapon is fully understood by the artisan's intellect. All this lethal and terrifying technology belonged to the hero's past and his squad on humanity's front lines. Focused on his flawless craft, the dwarven blacksmith lands crushing blows against the glowing iron block, lighting up the forge area. The boiling metal is suddenly cooled in the water, generating a thick cloud of hot steam across the rustic place. The final result kicks into action when the barrel of the new, rudimentary rifle spits fire in an impressive shot. The hero pulls the bolt of the newly created weapon, while the warrior and the artisan watch the practical test with great admiration. The shot's impact leaves no chances and shatters the wooden target into several pieces midair. Testing the next tactical model, the sergeant holds a heavy shotgun, evaluating the equipment's firm grip. With a quick and very confident motion, he racks the pump backward, prepping the machinery for the next shot. The empty casing flies out the side ejector, proving that the adapted mechanics work flawlessly in the shooter's hands. Showing off all his combat experience, the MC firmly plants his feet and aims at the targets spread out ahead. A violent blast echoes across the field, destroying multiple targets at once thanks to the attack's devastating spread. Satisfied with the performance, the leader inspects the 3 new weapons resting on the cloth, praising the incredible work that was done under such poor conditions. The blacksmith lets out a proud laugh, guaranteeing that the true value of those little beauties is hidden in the internal structure. The artisan details that he inserted small, sensitive magic stones inside the hammer and firing pin, which react directly to the user's physical impact. He explains, pointing to the diagram, that this force triggers a tiny magic circle etched into the base of the ammo itself. Perfectly blending engineering and sorcery, the inside of the casing houses a fireball scroll that generates absurd explosive pressure in the chamber. The explosion has nowhere to escape from the back, and all the force is directed entirely out the barrel, pushing the pointy warhead. By scraping against the cylinder grooves engraved with acceleration spells, the bullet gains absurd speed and a piercing spin. Testing this final marvel on the field, the blue guy pulls the revolver's trigger, feeling the powerful recoil in the palm of his hand. Quite impressed, he praises the creation for perfectly mixing all human military technology with the native, destructive magic of that world. The elf and the dwarf just watch the soldier reload the weapon's cylinder agilely and completely silently. Keeping his high standards, the leader asks why the ally didn't try to manufacture a high-performance, rapid-fire rifle right away. The artisan loses his patience instantly, yelling that he gathered every useless ore in that village and took a whole week just to forge that poor-quality metal. Boiling with anger at the demand, the man claims that managing to deliver a rifle, a shotgun, and a revolver was practically a divine miracle. Pointing his finger at the sergeant, the blacksmith warns that to create fast weapons in the Great Dragon Incubator, they urgently need to reach the Ark. Evaluating his new combat tools, the MC understands the situation and agrees that they have no choice but to travel to the mechanical base. Wasting not another second chatting, the military leader yells at the top of his lungs, ordering the squad to get into marching formation. The entire team quickly gets organized near the mounts, with the dwarf informing them that the Ark is located near the capital on a distant island from there. The hero sets the immediate strategy, advising that they will follow the village's merchant guild caravan to arrive at their destination in total safety. One of the small lackeys cocks his greenish gun, and the sergeant tells everyone to meticulously check their personal gear before leaving. Resting the long rifle on his broad shoulder, the blacksmith confirms that everything is in order and the path is clear to begin the long journey awaiting them. Holding the newly created rifle with some uncertainty, the elven warrior looks at the wood and metal weapon without quite understanding how it works. The blue sergeant calls the girl by her name and orders her to step forward. With that, he places the heavy equipment in her hands, leaving the young woman quite surprised by the gesture. The leader explains that even with her bad arm, she only needs to pull the trigger, guaranteeing that her sharp vision will make her a perfect shooter with that model. Reminiscing about his old world, the military man shares that weapon created legendary snipers, being used both to resist and to seize power. Panting and anxious, Celia rests the stock on her shoulder and asks directly how she should operate the equipment. She closes one eye, focusing entirely through the iron sights with extreme concentration. Activating her elven visual magic, the girl says she trusts his instructions to take the shot. A deafening boom cuts through the forest when she pulls the trigger, generating a powerful recoil while the soldier watches closely. The metal projectile tears through the air at extremely high speed and grazes past a small beetle on a leaf. Without veering off path, the shot perfectly hits the center of the set-up fabric target far away. Satisfied with the result, the MC smiles while the spy smiles in wonder that she can shoot again. Watching the test, the dwarven blacksmith's jaw completely drops at the absurd skill the long-eared girl just displayed. Totally dumbfounded, the artisan and one of the small lackeys stare at the scene, amazed by the girl's lethal precision. In the middle of the field, the young warrior stands firm holding the rifle with great pride in her new strength. Suddenly, the blacksmith reaches his hand toward the girl in a quick motion. Fascinated by the result, the dwarf raises his arm as if he wanted to take the rifle back while holding the shotgun in his other hand. Flashing a gold tooth in an excited smile, the artisan imitates the sound of the gunshot, celebrating the absolute success of the invention.